Warrior Lore. Chapter 5080. Lu Yao reprimanded Zichen loudly, implying that Zichen had stolen something from him. After witnessing Zichen's strength, he was smart enough not to get too close. Instead, he stood at a distance and shouted. Zichen glanced at Lu Yao with pity in his eyes. "You're the first one to be so enthusiastic about courting death." Lu Yao's expression changed drastically, and he wanted to retreat. From the corner of his eyes, he saw a light chasing after him. He had a bad feeling and immediately shouted, "Ogiest, save me!" The others saw all this with indifferent expressions. Everyone knew what Ogiest was going to do. As for Lu Yao, it would depend on his luck whether he could survive or not. The long staff whistled. Lu Yao rolled on the ground. He was in a very sorry state, but he barely dodged Zichen's attack. Then, using both hands and feet, he leaped forward like a magical beast. Boom! The ground where he was rolling shook and cracked, sending dust and dirt flying. Zichen's eyes were cold. He would not show mercy to someone who was courting death. Swoosh! Lu Yao used both hands and feet. After landing, he exerted force again and leaped forward. Zichen followed up with another attack, but it missed again. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. At this moment, Lu Yao's survival instinct completely broke out. It was an eye-opener for everyone. 3 attacks in a row, all of which missed. "Ogiest!" Lu Yao shouted. Because of the threat of death, his voice cracked. No one laughed at him. Instead, they admired him. Previously, they had seen Zichen fighting 1 against 6. In a one-on-one situation, Lu Yao could make Zichen miss 3 times in a row. It was not easy. Boom! Lu Yao blocked 3 attacks, but in the end, he could not block the 4th one. Accompanied by a huge tremor, Lu Yao was sent flying. After landing and rolling, he took advantage of the momentum and continued to roll. At this moment, he did not feel embarrassed at all. Swoosh! Ogiest brushed past him. Lu Yao flipped over and got up. He kept retreating until he was in the crowd. At this moment, his breath was very weak. "You must succeed." Lu Yao looked at Ogiest's back. In order to get back his weapon and armor, he had really risked his life. "Die!" Ogiest rushed towards Zichen and punched him. Above his fist, a dazzling light shone, releasing a powerful aura. In Zichen's hand, the long staff blocked the attack. The long staff also glowed. The two of them looked at each other from a distance, their eyes cold. Boom! Ogiest's fist smashed onto the long staff. The powerful shockwave caused Zichen's body to slide backwards. Traces were plowed on the ground, and smoke and dust rose into the air. "Die!" Ogiest tapped his foot, and his figure soared into the air. He could have flown, but at this moment, he chose to descend in an arc buzz. Above the fist, a strong light flashed again. This time, there was the light of rules lingering. Even though they were far away, everyone could still feel the intense pressure coming from the fist. This was the real body power that only 6 forces state possessed. It was a power that far surpassed 5 forces state. The lawbreakers in the distance could feel it more clearly. The reason why they could suppress spiritual casters was because of their own soul power. This was also the shortcoming of spiritual casters. However, lawbreakers also had a shortcoming, which was that their bodies were too weak. Once they were too close to spiritual casters during a battle, they would be seriously injured and even die if they were hit by the real body power. Therefore, the high and mighty lawbreakers were actually apprehensive of spiritual casters. Especially Zichen, who could ignore soul power, they were even more fearful. Ogiest's fist, which had used the real body power, whizzed down. Zichen used all his strength to block it. Buzz! On the long staff, a light shone. However, in the next moment, the long staff flew out of his hand. Zichen was also pushed back by the huge force. "My weapon!" Lu Yao, who was recovering with pure energy, saw this and his eyes lit up. This was obviously a good start. The others were slightly surprised. They were not surprised by Ogiest's strength, but by Zichen's tenacity. Again, Ogiest continued forward. He did not use a weapon, only his fist, but it was wrapped in the real body power. Buzz! As the fist struck out, a surge of energy surged. Zichen once again had that strange feeling. His body seemed to have become a thin piece of paper that could be torn apart at any time, even with the protection of the armor. This was the difference between real and fake. Under the rules, it was clearly displayed. The others watched indifferently. This was the most fundamental difference between the two sides. There were also some people whose expressions changed. If nothing unexpected happened, Zichun would die soon. When the soul power treasure appeared, it would be time for them to make a move. Humph! Lu Yao snorted. The armor was about to return. At this moment, there was a cry of surprise. Ogiest's attack did not land but was blocked by an object. It was the bone staff that came to this world with Zichun. On the bone staff, there was a light that shone and blocked the real body power of the punch. Bang! There was a strong shock and both of them retreated. Unexpectedly, neither of them had the upper hand. Zichun was slightly startled. He looked at the bone staff in his hand. Just a moment ago, the bone staff seemed to have activated a different kind of power. Real body power. How do you have real body power? Ogiest was shocked. To be able to block real body power, it was naturally another kind of real body power. But the opponent was only in the 5 strength realm. Real body power? Zichun heard and his eyes lit up. Let's try again. He used all his strength to activate the bone staff and smashed it towards Ogiest's head. Ogiest shouted and threw another powerful punch. There was another roar and a strong shock. Both of them retreated again. Once again, they were evenly matched. And this time, Zichun felt it very clearly. After his spiritual power entered the bone staff, there was a change. It was as if it was increased by a level. Next, Zichun launched the fiercest attack towards Ogiest in front of everyone's dumbfounded expressions. A 5 strength realm was fighting against a 6 strength realm. The shock brought by this was too great. In the distance, amidst the exclamations, someone finally saw the reason. It's that weird bone weapon. Through it, the attack can be increased by a level. This caused an uproar. The reason was very simple. Zichun, who was holding the bone staff, had the fighting power of a 6 strength realm. At this moment, everyone was moved. Did that mean that Zichun was now equivalent to a 6 strength realm spiritual caster? And a 6 strength realm spiritual caster who was not afraid of lawbreakers? For a moment, many lawbreakers' faces turned ugly. Because once the two sides started fighting, Zichun would withstand the soul power attack and get close to them. Then, what awaited them would be danger. At this moment, they felt the threat of Zichun and their eyes turned cold. Chapter 5081. The expressions of the 6 Forces Realm cultivators, who were just watching the show, gradually changed. The battle prowess Zichun displayed had completely exceeded their expectations. It seemed that he was only a 5 Forces Realm cultivator, but his current battle prowess was equivalent to a 6 Forces Realm cultivator. Zichun's spiritual power was forcibly increased by a level by the bone rod, and he was evenly matched with Ogiest. How can this be? Phoebe was shocked. How can there be such a strange weapon in this world? That's not a weapon, it's a bone rod. Spicer's eyes flashed, and he said in a low voice, "The bones of law-breaking beasts above the 6 Forces realm can be used to refine weapons. But the bone rod in his hand doesn't seem to have been refined, and yet it has such power. It must have been very powerful when it was alive." Phoebe gritted his teeth and said angrily, "This damn guy, his luck is really good. He got so many treasures." Compared to the bone rod's current power, the rod that was sent flying was nothing. Ogiest started to get impatient after attacking for a long time without success. At this moment, Zichun's mind moved, and the slaughter spirit appeared. Like a ray of light, it pierced towards Ogiest's forehead. Ogiest was shocked and subconsciously raised his hand to block. At this moment, the bone rod smashed downwards with a tyrannical force and landed on his body. Bang! Ogiest was sent flying until he was 10 feet away, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. His face gradually darkened, and his eyes were surging with cold, killing intent. His mouth opened slightly, as if he wanted to say something. Swoosh! Zichun held the bone rod in his hand, and under the exclamations, he chose to take the initiative to attack. So what if he was a 6 Forces realm cultivator? He was not afraid at all. This is too barbaric. Kant, who had already retreated, looked in front of him in shock. Zichen's appearance broke his understanding of common sense. Right now, he, a 5-forces realm cultivator, actually dared to take the initiative to attack a 6-forces realm cultivator. What kind of courage did this require? Zichun used facts to tell Kant that courage was not required, just strength was enough. Bang, bang, bang. Powerful energy vibrated in front of him, stirring up countless ripples. Under everybody's shocked gazes, Ogiest started to retreat. In the face of Zichen's strong attacks, he gradually lost ground. This scene caused many people's expressions to change. In the eyes of many spellbreakers, Zichun had become even more of a threat. Some people glanced around as if they were communicating with their eyes. "My lord." Marcus's eyes were filled with shock. Ape Bert was also very surprised. Clearly, he did not expect that the young man who needed his protection back then would grow to such a level. At this moment, Zichun was undoubtedly the center of attention. Everyone was shocked. It also made the spellbreakers fearful. Ape Bert's eyes were burning. Boom. With the powerful vibration, Ogiest was beaten back again. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Ogiest said coldly, "Why did you stop?" After glancing at Ogiest, Zichun didn't say anything. After that, he looked at Kant and said, "Let's go to the next place." Kant was stunned when he heard this, and he was slightly puzzled. The battle wasn't over yet, so why were they leaving? "Want to leave? Do you think it's possible?" Ogiest's voice was cold. There was also some commotion in the crowd. Zichen said, "If you fight with your life on the line, I believe that the one who dies will definitely be you. I don't think you have the guts to fight with your life on the line, right?" Ogiest's expression was ugly as he said disdainfully, "With just you? Are you worthy of fighting with your life on the line? I can also exhaust you to death. If you don't believe me, you can try." Of course, Zichun would not try because it was very disadvantageous to him, even if he could kill Ogiest. Zichun walked to the side and picked up the long staff that was sent flying. Compared to the bone staff, this long staff only had toughness left. Being underestimated by Zichun, Ogiest's expression became more and more unsightly. However, seeing that the other party was about to leave, he did not go forward to entangle. Of course, he did not believe that a mere 5 strength realm could kill him. However, if the two of them were injured while fighting with their lives on the line, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Wait. At this moment, a person stood up. It was Spike. As he walked out, several people followed. These were all spellbreakers. Ogiest was stunned at first, but he quickly reacted. These people felt threatened and planned to eliminate Zichan here. Are they going to join forces? Ogiest was somewhat expectant. He did not mind at all if everyone joined forces to kill Zichan. Zichan stopped and looked at these people who came with ill intentions. Kant retreated to the side. He looked at Zichan with pity in his eyes. Several 6-strength realm spellbreakers had come. Even if Zichan had a treasure, he felt that it was impossible for him to survive. "What do you mean by this? Are you planning to join forces?" A voice suddenly sounded from the crowd. 2 spirit spellbreakers walked over. The leader was Albert, and beside him was Marcus, who braced himself. Compared to other 6-strength realm spellbreakers, he, a 5-strength realm spellbreaker, did not even have the right to speak. Spike looked at Albert and said with a frown, "What do you mean?" Ape Bert smiled faintly and said, "Nothing. I just want to ask, why are you stopping my people?" "Your people?" A cold glint flashed in Spike's eyes. "Are you sure?" Albert cupped his fists in the direction of Broken Law City and said, "Lord Eden personally assigned them. What do you think?" A hint of anger appeared on Spike's face. "You're using Eden to suppress me? I wouldn't dare. I'm just stating the truth." Albert said, "Zichun went out this time to clean up the spellbreakers and complete the mission. I didn't see how he offended you." Zichun was surprised by Albert's appearance. After all, from what he knew from Marcus, this lord was famous for protecting himself. Now, it was rare to see someone who did not hesitate to offend a few spellbreakers to speak up. Could it be that Lord Eden? After all, there were big shots above Albert. "You want to protect him?" Spike asked again. The others also had cold eyes. "No, I'm just learning the truth," Albert said. "If something goes wrong and Lord Eden asks about it, I can't explain it, right? Spicer glanced at Abbott, then glanced at Zichun, and a meaningful smile flashed across his face. He turned around and left. The other spellbreakers did not say anything and followed him. Albert was stunned. He did not expect these people to be so easy to talk to. So, he looked at Zichun and said, Zichun, your mission is complete. You can go back. Zichun cupped his fists and said, Lord, I still want to walk around. This time, he only obtained a few dozen streams of pure power. According to his refining speed, they would be gone soon. Instead of coming out again, it was better to stay here and go back when he had enough. After all, no one should come to trouble him now. Go back, Albert said again. Chapter 5082. After Spicer and the others left, the others also left. They didn't continue to cause trouble for Zichun. Naturally, they were somewhat unwilling to leave. However, they gave up just like that. Of course, the main reason was that the 6th strength state chose to give up. The others didn't have the ability to pursue the matter. Zichun returned with 8 Bert. On the way back, he greeted Butterball and Kant. They clearly despised him, but they didn't dare to do anything. Under the disdainful gazes of their friends, they pretended not to see him. Marcus was very excited. The 5 strength state was comparable to the 6 strength state. Zichun had created another miracle. After returning to the city, Zichun didn't go back immediately. Instead, he followed 8 Bert back to his residence. After returning to his residence, 8 Bert waved his hand and motioned for Marcus to wait outside. He and Zichun clearly had something to talk about. Marcus closed the door and left. 8 Bert smiled and said, Sit. Zichun shook his head. What orders do you have for me, sir? 8 Bert said, Of course not. Your current combat strength is comparable to the 6th strength state. I'm very surprised to hear that. This means that you and I are on equal footing. Zichun said, You flatter me, sir. I'm just relying on external objects. It's not true ability. Zichun, don't belittle yourself. If you're capable, then you're capable. 8 Bert changed the topic and said, However, ability isn't the only way to survive in Dharma Breaker City. Take me for example. I've been in the 6th strength state for many years and my combat strength isn't bad, but what can I do? I have Lord Eden above me. I don't dare to disobey him at all. Zichun nodded. Just like before, those Dharma Breakers were fearless, but when I mentioned Lord Eden's name, you see, everyone was scared and retreated. 8 Bert smiled and said, So, in this place, although ability is important, power and relationships can't be ignored. You're right, sir. Zichun immediately cupped his fists and said, Zichun has learned something. I'll remember it. 8 Bert continued, Last time I went to see Lord Eden, I discovered that he has a fondness for some strange things. Zichun remained silent. Sometimes, big shots are like this. Their tempers are unpredictable. They like one thing today and another tomorrow. Of course, other than liking, it was also the same for people. Sometimes, if it felt that you were not bad, it would naturally protect you and even reward you with many resources, allowing you to reach an unimaginable realm. But sometimes, if you don't like them, then they can only be cast aside. It's hard to say whether they'll live or die. Zichun lowered his head and remained silent. But at this moment, he recalled Spicer's meaningful expression when he left. Could it be that the other party had already guessed it? Living here, it's not a big deal to lose some combat power. As long as he had the protection of his master, there would be no danger to his life. But without Milord's protection, even if they have a body full of battle strength, they will still be in a precarious situation. Looking at Zichun, who was still silent, 8 Bert smiled and said, I'm just saying casually. Just treat it as a casual chat. Zichun, don't think too much. All right, you can go back first. By the way, call Marcus over. I have something to tell him. Zichun went out, and Marcus walked in. Zichun didn't stay in this mansion. He walked straight out of the mansion and waited for Marcus at the door. At this moment, he really couldn't calm down. None of them were good people. Everyone had their own agenda and was selfish. A moment later, Marcus walked out. Zichun saw that his expression wasn't too good, but he didn't ask much. The two of them walked towards the residence. When they were about to reach the residence, Marcus finally couldn't help but ask, What did Milord say to you? Nothing. Zichen naturally understood what 8-Bert meant, but he pretended not to know. In this place, was it useless to have strong combat power? Was it useful to rely on Milord? What a joke. If that was really the case, he would have been dead long ago. Marcus said. Milord said that in order to prevent similar dangers from happening again, you shouldn't go out. Stay in the city. All right. Zichen nodded. I'm very surprised that Milord was willing to help this time. Marcus smiled and said, It seems that Milord really treats you as one of his own. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so considerate of you. Zichen nodded and didn't explain. After returning to his residence, Zichen sat cross-legged. He didn't refine the energy. This time, he only obtained 40 streams of pure energy. Before he was sure of 8-Bert's true intentions, he had to use the energy sparingly. The first day was peaceful, and no one came to cause trouble. In Pofa City, discussions about Zichen had already spread like wildfire. The next day, Zichen walked out of his room and stood outside the door to stretch. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that someone was staring in his direction. Zichen decided to walk around, and he attracted a lot of attention along the way. He found Kant again, and when the latter saw him, it was as if he had eaten a rat. Why are you here again? I'm here to see you. Zichen's answer made Kant curl his lips. I'm telling you, don't even think about it this time. No one will take you out again. No one will take you out. Zichen looked at Kant. What do you know? Kant shook his head. I don't know, but if you want to go out, it's obviously impossible. Seeing Zichen frown slightly, Butterball and Kant didn't know why, but they felt some compassion in their hearts. They suddenly said, Let me give you a piece of advice. Save what you can. Zichen's expression changed slightly. He wasn't stupid and understood Kant's true intentions. Thanks. Seeing Butterball's determined expression, Zichen turned and left. This time, he went straight out of the city. Butterball and Kant saw this and their expressions changed, but they didn't say anything. Halfway through, 2 4-strength realm spirit casters appeared and stopped Zichen. They indifferently told him not to go out. This was the rule. In Pofa City, spirit casters had to follow many rules, but spellbreakers had it slightly better. Zichen understood 8-Bert's intentions. He didn't say anything and went to the Hall of Spirit Spells. With Zichen's arrival, many people looked at him strangely. Then, they saw Zichen take out 2 strands of pure energy and exchange them for 200 strands of ordinary energy. All this time, they had only seen people exchanging pure energy, but they had never seen anyone exchanging pure energy for magic power. This attracted a lot of attention. Zichen took these strands of energy and went back. He knew that he wouldn't be able to refine pure energy for a long time. These ordinary strands of energy could only sustain his basic livelihood. As for how long this situation would last, Zichen wasn't sure. However, according to the rules, it wouldn't last more than a month. This was because he had to do a mission every month. Therefore, Zichen had been waiting to see what 8-Bert's intentions were. A month later, Marcus came and gave Zichen a mission. He was to bring a basket of crystals to the Hall of Spirit Spells. Chapter 5083. Zichen was considered to have completed his mission by receiving 1 energy as a reward. Everything was within the rules. Marcus' heart was heavy as he watched Zichen walk out of the Hall of Spiritual Spells. He would be a fool if he still did not realize what was going on. His Excellency did not do this to protect him. Let's go back. Zichen approached him and smiled. Marcus looked guilty and said, It seems that I have harmed you. Zichen was not afraid of the spellbreakers. He had completely suppressed them and caused them to suffer a great loss. He had brought honor to all the spiritual spellcasters. He did not expect that the problem would occur to his own people. The spiritual spellcasters who lived here never dared to go against the spellbreakers. Zichen was the first. They could not fight against outsiders, but they could fight against each other internally. Just like now, His Excellency used the rules against Zichen. Zichen could not do anything about it. This has nothing to do with you. Zichen was on his way back. He had experienced this kind of thing too many times. He had understood human nature the moment he fell off the cliff. Many people seemed to have heard the news. They all had mocking smiles on their faces. Phoebe and the others also came. At this moment, They would not miss the opportunity to join in the fun. Zichan, I heard that you went out on a mission today. You must have gained a lot, right? Phoebe walked up and smiled at him. Zichan glanced at Phoebe and did not say anything. You are a 5 forces realm expert, and your battle power is comparable to a 6 forces realm expert. Even if we join forces, we can't beat you. Phoebe clicked his tongue and said, I think, with your battle power, you would need at least 20 streams of pure energy to go out on a mission, right? Someone next to her said, Phoebe, you're thinking too little. This kind of great expert obtained 40 strands of pure energy the last time he went out. This time, he has a mission, so he'll at least get 50 strands of pure energy. Wow, 50 streams of pure energy. We are also very envious. It would be great if there were 50 streams, but I just saw that there was only 1 stream of normal energy. It can't be? Ordinary energy was something that even a cultivator at the 4th stage of strength would disdain to take. Great expert, you didn't take it, did you? The few of them were all smiling proudly. Zichan glanced at them. Phoebe said, What, you want to fight? Fighting is forbidden here. There are rules. Zichan, who was in a bad mood, said coldly, Don't mess with me. Otherwise, if I take things too hard one day and kill all of you, don't blame me for making a loss. What do you mean? Even if you kill us, you will? Halfway through his words, Phoebe reacted and said angrily, You dare to look down on us? It was obvious that the deal Zichan was talking about was exchanging his life for the lives of these people. However, they were all spellbreakers. Their lives were much more precious than Zichan's. However, they did not force Zichan to leave with Marcus. You're already like this, and you're still pretending in front of us? What's the point? Phoebe looked at Zichan's back and spat fiercely. Damn it, those cowards of spirit spellcasters don't dare to do anything to us, but they're quite good at dealing with their own people. Butterball and Kant said, This time, it's quite ruthless. Zichan might be trapped here until he dies. Then, he said with emotion, What a pity that such a powerful existence has such a fate. Phoebe looked at Kant. If you don't kill him like this, do you have other ways to kill him? I think you're out of your mind. You're actually feeling sorry for that guy. Kant said, How can it not be a pity? He has 2 treasures on him. I don't know who will benefit from it. In that case, it's quite a pity. Phoebe said regretfully. However, the higher-ups have already told us not to interfere. Then, we can only stay out of it. Almost everyone in Pofa City knew about Zichan, and at the same time, they admired Ape's cleverness. During this month, Zichan stayed in his room and barely refined the energy. He relied on his own cultivation to maintain the consumption. It was obviously unrealistic for Ape to want to trap him to death. However, his progress would be much slower. For the people here, the most worthless thing was probably time, so they had not reached the point of despair yet. The next month, another mission came. Zichan was required to move some things. They were extremely heavy and consumed a lot of energy. After Zichan finished, his energy was almost depleted. This time, he obtained 2 ordinary energies, which were obviously far less than the consumption. Zichan took the energy and refined it as he walked. His strength recovered very slowly. Ape sat in his room and listened to his subordinates report. He smiled faintly. Everything will continue in 2 days. Here, time was the most worthless thing, but Ape did not want to wait for a long time. 2 days later, the same mission came again. This disrupted Zichan's plan. If the reward was not enough, he would have to consume his own energy. After a long time, he would not be able to make ends meet. During this time, Zichan took out 2 more pure energies and went to the Hall of Spiritual Spells to exchange them for ordinary energy. Then, the missions continued. The more effort, the less the reward. During this time, no one cared. If this continued, Zichan's energy would eventually be depleted. On this day, Zichan returned to his room, exhausted. Marcus was here. He had not been here for a long time. Zichan, you can't go on like this. You'd better. At this point, the rest of the words couldn't be said. Zichan said, I can still live with the things. If I hand them over, who do you think can protect me? Ape? After Marcus left, he secretly left behind 10 streaks of pure energy. Zichun put away the pure energies and began to recover. During this time, he did not consume any energy. After one night, all his energy was recovered. Zichun, who was not on a mission today, took the initiative to walk out of his room. He held Lu Yao's staff in his hand. It was obviously a good item of high quality. Zichun planned to sell it. Along the way, he saw Lu Yao and was ridiculed. During this time, many people coveted the weapon, but no one was willing to buy it. So, Zichun went to the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Here, one could trade freely and buy some weapons. However, when Zichun approached him with a long staff, the other party actually refused. It was normal to exchange for energy. Everyone had the right to do so, but there was no mandatory requirement to exchange for weapons. So, Zichun failed and walked out. He knew he was being targeted, but there was nothing he could do. So, he went to find Kant. Kant was very surprised when he heard Zichun's intention. "Are you crazy? I'm a spellbreaker. This thing is useless to me." Zichun turned and left. Watching Zichun leave, looking at his lonely back. Maybe he came here because he had no other choice. For some reason, he felt a little ashamed. He immediately shouted, "Wait, I want this thing." He immediately ran forward and took out the pure spellbreaker power. This was a power that only spellbreakers could use. Spiritual spellbreakers could not use it, but it could be exchanged. He took out 100 of them. "Here, I only have this much now. If you're not in a hurry, I'll go back and find you some more." Kant handed the energy to Zichun. Zichun took it, then looked deeply at Butterball and turned to leave. He went to the Hall of Spiritual Spells and directly exchanged for spiritual power. 1-for-1 exchange. This was within the rules. After that, Zichun took the energy and went straight out of the city. Chapter 5084. If he continued to stay here, sooner or later, Zichun would be exhausted to death by the so-called rules. Leaving was the only way. Of course, since he was here, he couldn't just leave casually. Just like how Zichun couldn't go out of the city to hunt law-breaking beasts, there were rules too. But now, Zichun didn't want to follow the rules anymore. Why didn't he go out of the city, but back to where he came from? Because Zichun wasn't familiar with this place. Once he left, he would definitely be hunted down. Zichun wasn't prepared to deal with so many powerhouses here. So, he wanted to leave the city and go back to where he came from. At least, he had the home advantage and was familiar with the environment. When Phoebe and the others heard the news and rushed over, Zichun had already finished exchanging energy at the Hall of Spiritual Spells. This time, he didn't exchange for normal energy, but spiritual energy. Phoebe looked at the long rod in Kant's hand and said, "Are you stupid? You can't use this stupid thing. Why do you want to trade with him?" Butterball opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to respond. "In this place, no one will trade with him, except for you, you idiot." Phoebe said angrily, "Sometimes, I wonder if you're really an idiot. If you don't exchange energy with him, he'll die here sooner or later. If you give him energy, he'll live for a long time." The others also scolded Butterball. Butterball lowered his head. He was in the wrong this time, but he didn't argue. Just then, a lawbreaker suddenly came from afar. When he was still some distance away, he shouted, "Come with me. Zichun seems to want to leave the city." "Leave the city?" Phoebe's expression changed as she said, How dare he? How dare he ignore the rules? Does he think he's a lawbreaker?" Sanglari was confused. That shouldn't be. He got so much energy from Kant this time. It's enough for him to survive for a long time. Why does he want to leave the city? That person said excitedly, "Not this city, but that outside the city, where he came from. He actually wants to leave this place." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. This guy is quite bold. Phoebe's eyes flashed, and then he patted Kant hard and praised, "Good boy. You are not stupid. It seems that you are really smart." Everyone else was stunned. Even Kant didn't understand Phoebe's sudden change in attitude. "Brat, you're really extraordinary." "Indeed, I didn't expect this either." Phoebe said, "Only by giving Zichun enough energy will he have the guts to leave and fight with us. If he didn't exchange for it, then he, who had no energy left, could only stay here and wait for death. But it's different now. With energy, this kid's guts have grown. Let's go." Let's go, Phoebe said excitedly. Once Zichen leaves this time, he will definitely be hunted down. This time, he will definitely die. Just wait and see. The Six Powers Realm cultivators will no longer have to worry about us. Sanlali and the rest came to their senses and immediately followed behind. Butterball and Kant followed at the back. At this moment, he muttered, "Could it be that I have harmed him?" He recalled Zichen's expression. If he had rejected Zichen, would he have stayed in the city obediently and not risked his life? Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Now that things had come to this, he could only follow. As they followed, they saw Zichen heading out of the city. Along the way, there were quite a few people looking in all directions, but no one stopped him. They knew very well that Zichen was going against the rules of Pofa City. In Pofa City, there had never been a case of a spiritual caster breaking the rules. Zichen would be the first. Zichen's expression was calm. He wore Lu Yao's armor and walked out of the city. Marcus appeared in the crowd. Looking at Zichen leaving alone, he felt ashamed. If he had known this would happen, he would not have brought Zichen to Pofa City. But now, once he left, he would become the enemy of the entire Pofa City. At that time, the Pofa breakers and spiritual casters would not let him go. No matter how strong he was, how could he fight against so many experts? Zichen, don't be rash. Marcus immediately shouted when he thought of the situation Zichen was going to face. He shuddered in fear. Zichen did not turn around, as if he did not hear Marcus' voice. The others looked at Marcus as if they were looking at a monster. It was as if they were saying, "No one is stopping you, so why are you talking so much? If you leave now, you won't be able to turn back?" Marcus clenched his teeth and said, "At that time, you will become the enemy of the whole world." Becoming the enemy of the whole world might be a bit heavy, but it was definitely true. Once he left the city, he would have no friends. Although he did not have any friends now, he did not have so many enemies either. Marcus seemed to want to say something, but at this moment, 8-Bert's voice sounded. "Marcus, you're talking too much. He doesn't even care about you. Why do you have to be so nice to him?" 8-Bert walked over from afar. Moreover, 8-Bert's subordinates, never meddle in other people's business. Everyone knows this. "Yes, I understand." Marcus quickly bowed. The others looked at 8-Bert, and many people's expressions changed. This once inconspicuous existence had gradually become famous recently. Zichen, whom even a Six Forces realm spellbreaker could not do anything to, had actually been defeated by him, and had been completely subdued by him. It could be said that Zichen was able to reach this point because 8-Bert used all his strength to suppress him. Zichen, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped when he heard this voice. As he stopped, everyone stopped as well. Zichen had not left yet, so according to the rules, no one could attack him. Now, both sides were not enemies yet. Zichen looked at 8-Bert and said coldly, "I hope to see you again outside the city. If you have the ability, I don't mind giving you all the supreme treasures on me." Then, Zichen laughed mockingly. "Of course, the premise is that you have the guts. It's not a big deal to play tricks. You have to have the ability." 8-Bert said, "Zichen, what do you mean by this? Are you dissatisfied with the mission I gave you? Then we can try to adjust it. Don't break the rules of Dharma Breaker City, because once you break the rules, no one will protect you anymore." Protection? Your hypocrisy is disgusting. Besides, you have the guts to do it, but don't have the guts to admit it. I really look down on you. Zichen turned around and continued to walk out of the city. 8-Bert looked at Zichen coldly. When they were about to reach the outside of the city, two people appeared. They were the guards in charge of this place. After they appeared, they warned Zichen not to break the rules. While talking, the two of them looked at him mockingly. It was obvious that it was just a routine thing. In fact, they were looking forward to Zichen's departure. Zichen did not disappoint them. He directly took out the token. Buzz. Zichen did not hesitate and directly activated the token. The next moment, Zichen disappeared. Exclamations sounded around because Zichen had broken the rules and would become a great enemy of Dharma Breaker City. Kill. Chapter 5085. There was an uproar in Pofa City. Although they had guessed that Zichen was going to break the rules and leave, It was another matter to see it with their own eyes. He was the first spirit caster in history to break the rules. In everyone's words, he was very daring. Shouts rang out, and some people immediately chased after him. Of course, these people were mainly in the 5-strength state. Most of them were there to join in the fun. If there was a chance to take advantage, they would not let it go. The 6-strength state was very calm because they also needed to follow some rules, so they needed to wait for a while. At the very least, they needed to get orders from their superiors. He really went out. Let's go too. Phoebe's eyes were shining with excitement. The others were nodding. Zichen was already an enemy of the world. It would be difficult for him to turn the situation around. Everyone followed him out and could see the scene of a drowning dog being beaten. They believed that this time, there would not be a miracle. Zichen would definitely die. I have to wait. At this moment, Butterball and Kant suddenly spoke. Wait for what? Phoebe did not understand. I have to find a piece of martial crystal, just in case. As soon as Butterball and Kant finished speaking, their heads were hit hard. Phoebe angrily rebuked, Are you stupid? Zichen can't even take care of himself, and he dares to rob us? Butterball covered his head. What if? There is no what if. This time, he will definitely die. Phoebe was very confident. He will definitely die, Butterball said again. But what if we are too close and accidentally fall into his hands? Phoebe was startled. Thinking about it, it seemed to be a possibility. He hesitated slightly and said, Can't we just stay away from him? However, when he said this, he was obviously not confident. After all, he had suffered many losses in Zichen's hands. If that guy did not see anything, he would really kill them. It was better to be safe than sorry. What if they bumped into him? After hesitating, Phoebe also felt that they should find a piece of martial crystal and bring it with them. At least it could be used for self-defense. And so, they all went back. Those 6 forces realm spirit mages had all left because they needed to wait for orders from above. However, many of those 5 forces realm spirit mages who had left were spies. As for the 6 forces realm spellbreakers, they seemed to know that they could not kill Zichen. Since they had the authority, they were not in a hurry to chase after him. Zichen reached the outskirts of the city and ran towards the camp where he was previously. Before leaving, there were still some things that needed to be done. When he saw Miao Pengfei and Hu Zheng, he didn't have time to explain. He only told them that no matter what happened, they had to insist that they weren't close. The two of them were dumbfounded as they watched Zichen leave. Not long after, the sounds of battle could be heard. Those 5 strengths realm cultivators chased after them and asked if they had seen Zichen. The people outside the city had never seen such a scene before. They were all scared silly. No one dared to hide anything and immediately pointed in the direction Zichen had escaped. 8-Bert didn't come out, but Marcus followed him out. He knew Miao Pengfei, but he didn't say much. Through the directions that others had given to Zichen, he seemed to have vaguely guessed where Zichen was going. Not good, there. His expression changed as he sensed that something was wrong. However, he didn't warn everyone. At this point, it seemed that Zichen had nowhere to go. He followed behind. It could be expected that the sky would be pierced through next. And the cause of all this was not the doing of the lawless spellbreakers, but a spirit mage who had followed the rules for many years. When he thought of Lord 8-Bert, Marcus felt an indescribable discomfort. Why had Lord become like this? Zichen, stop. Don't run if you have the ability. Kid, there are so many people chasing you. Where can you run to? Quickly surrender. Under the guidance of the people who chased out, they finally found Zichen's traces. Immediately, some people shouted loudly. Zichen lowered his head and hurried on, ignoring the shouts of the crowd. Seeing that Zichen ignored them, the crowd shouted even more vigorously. One person shouted a lot, which made Zichen a little irritated. Therefore, Zichen stopped, turned around, and looked at the crowd that was rushing over. Many of them were in the 5-strength state. Almost all of them were in the 5-strength state. Kill! Zichen shouted and rushed towards the group alone. This made everyone's expressions change drastically. They didn't expect that just shouting a few words would anger the other party. However, when some people saw this, their eyes lit up and said, Everyone, this is a rare opportunity. If you don't seize it this time, you won't have another chance. It was obvious that everyone present was in the 5-strength state. Once they killed Zichun, they would obtain the supreme treasure by chance. However, if they waited until the 6-strength state came, it would be difficult for them to have such an opportunity again. Therefore, many people were tempted and shouted again, "Everyone, let's work together to kill the enemy." Zichun approached. Wearing his armor, he took out his bone staff and hit it forward. Buzz! He fully activated the power of the bone staff, and it flew forward. As the light fell, more than half of the bodies of 2 people in the 5-strength state who were enveloped by the light disappeared. Before they could be treated, their bodies disappeared. During this time, several attacks fell on Zichun's body, but they were blocked by his armor. Lu Yao's armor had a good defense. Buzz! The second attack fell, and 2 more people disappeared. This kind of scene of instant annihilation caused everyone to be endlessly terrified. Although the supreme treasure was important, their lives were more precious. Moreover, no one wanted to be the first to die. Therefore, after Zichun's 2 attacks, a strange scene appeared. When Zichun moved forward, the crowd began to retreat. Zichun had scared off a group of people by himself. Just like that, after taking the lives of 2 more people in the 5-strength state, Zichun turned and left. The crowd was stunned and did not dare to follow him immediately. This was because Zichun might turn back and come back. At that time, the person who was at the front would definitely die. Therefore, the crowd followed behind and kept a distance from Zichun. During this time, they did not dare to shout for fear of provoking Zichun again. Soon, night fell. Zichun did not stop and continued to move forward. The crowd was afraid of losing him, so they closed the distance between them. When Zichun walked past a high and low area, he went around to the side and attacked the crowd when they least expected it. The crowd immediately scattered like birds and beasts. This time, because it was too chaotic and Zichun caught them off guard, more than 10 people died. Zichun left again, leaving behind the others who were still in a state of shock. Everyone followed behind him cautiously. Only when the sun had risen did they relax. Therefore, for the next few days and nights, the crowd kept a certain distance from Zichun. "I know where he's going," sang Laurie, who had followed up again, exclaimed when she saw the familiar path. Phoebe and the others looked at her. When they came out with the martial crystals, they heard that Zichun had turned back and killed people. This time, he was even more agile. They were immediately glad. "He's going to the mine with the killing crystals." Sang Laurie was puzzled, but is he going to use the killing crystals to deal with everyone? She could not understand because everyone present was in the 5-strength state and could completely block the attack of the killing intent. Zichun's move was obviously useless. Chapter 5086. Regarding this mineral vein, there was probably no one more familiar than Zichun. This was his turning point. If not for the fact that he had nowhere else to go, he wouldn't have come back, because there was a hidden danger here. But now, he had nowhere to go. He could only come here to fight for a chance of survival. Even if there was no chance of survival, he had to drag more people down with him. As Zichun stopped, those 5-strength state cultivators also stopped. They didn't dare to get too close. Zichun looked at the crowd. Everyone was also looking at Zichun. Both sides just stared at each other. No one dared to make a move. Not even a single person dared to clamor. Next, they just had to wait. Wait for the 6-strength state to arrive. After all, this was a battle between them. Those in the 5-strength state would only die. In everyone's knowledge, Zichun already had 3 treasures on him. The soul power treasure, the bone staff treasure, and that strange light. The 6-strength state didn't disappoint Zichun. Soon, they arrived. The first one was the lawbreaker, Spicer. After he appeared, he didn't make a move. Instead, he stood in front. Phoebe and the others stood beside him, pointing at Zichun and whispering to each other. Spicer said, "Let's wait. I think the lawbreakers won't make a move first." He had already failed once. Naturally, he wouldn't embarrass himself again. So, if the lawbreakers wanted to get the treasures, they had to wait for the lawbreakers to kill Zichun first. Then, a chaotic battle would break out. The treasures were obtained by one's own ability. The lawbreakers had a lot of power. They could completely ignore the rules. So, they came quickly. Whether it was to fight for the treasures or to watch the show, more than 10 people came in the blink of an eye. The number was still increasing. After they arrived, they didn't make a move. They just watched from the front. Zichen wasn't in a hurry. He even sat down cross-legged. The sky gradually darkened. Zichen retreated and stopped at the entrance of the cave. He didn't go in. He looked ahead. The bonfire was rising. Everyone stayed in the distance. They were still pointing and mocking. However, they were very careful to suppress it. Early the next morning, a long whistle sounded. The lawbreakers had finally arrived. There were dozens of them, almost twice as many as the spellbreakers. Following their arrival, a commotion broke out in the crowd. If nothing unexpected happened, the battle should begin soon. Zichun, I want you dead. There was no dialogue or discussion. There was not even any moral suppression, nor did he place himself on the side of absolute justice, because it was completely unnecessary. It was also because this was outside the city and there were no rules. In a place where there was no need to abide by the rules, the law of the jungle prevailed. August attacked Zichun. He was the one who initiated the battle. Zichun held the bone stick in his hand, looking at August, who was dashing forward. A cold light shot out from his eyes. Roll over here. Let's have a good fight. Ever since he came here, he had been targeted for no reason, and it happened again and again. This time, he was undoubtedly the most miserable one. He had nowhere to go in the city, so he could only retreat. Therefore, Zichun, who had a belly full of anger, also wanted to fight to his heart's content. Why was he always the one being bullied? Buzz. The bone stick emitted a light. After the enhancement, the bone stick had an ability that was not weak. Bang. A strong vibration caused August's body to retreat backward. Zichen's feet tapped, and his body leaped high. He could not fly, so his body fell in an arc, smashing toward August's head. The other 6 forces realm spirit casters landed one after another, standing in another direction, facing the spellbreakers from afar. Boom. A strong force came from the front, forming a violent fluctuation. August's body retreated again. Go to hell, he roared, using the rule of true power. However, under the bone stick, the rule of true power was dissolved in an instant. Zichun, who had the bone stick, was equivalent to a 6 forces realm spirit caster. Naturally, he was not afraid of the opponent. August's face was very ugly. He was not satisfied that he could not suppress Zichun. Of course, Zichun was also not satisfied. It was not his intention to fight to a draw with August. He held the bone stick tightly, his eyes cold. His heart was filled with endless anger. Dong. As if sensing the change in his mood, Zichen's heart suddenly jumped, and a ripple spread out in his heart lake. Zichun felt that the blood in his body suddenly flowed faster. His body was like a flame that was about to burn. His fighting spirit burst out. Dong. His heart was still beating, strong and powerful. Waves of ripples surged in his heart lake. Die. Zichun stepped on the ground, and the ground under his feet immediately cracked. He once again attacked August. August said coldly, "It's useless. You can't do anything to me." Light circulated around his body. His hands blocked in front of him, and true power surged out from his arms. The bone stick in Zichen's hand smashed down high. Along with the strong vibration, August's body flew backward, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. His arms drooped down. Both of his arms had been broken. There was an uproar in the distance. Apparently, no one had thought that such a scene would happen. Previously, they were evenly matched. Why was there a gap now? Dong. Zichen's heart was still beating vigorously. There was energy surging in his heart, turning into power. At this moment, Zichun felt as if he had an inexhaustible supply of energy, as well as an inexhaustible supply of power. Forward. Sweep. Infinite radiance sprinkled down, bringing along a dangerous aura. Boom. August coughed out blood and flew backward. He, who had a real body, was obviously injured. The battle between the two sides had changed from being evenly matched to gradually losing. In Zichen's hand, the bone stick smashed down again and again. Every time, he used all of his strength. August coughed out blood again and again. His eyes had a touch of fear. He didn't know why Zichun suddenly became strong, and he had the intention to retreat. So many people had come this time. He was just fighting the first battle. There was no need to lose his life here. Buzz. At this moment, the slaughter spirit appeared and went straight between the opponent's eyebrows. Puff! The slaughter spirit pierced through his head. August let out a loud cry and immediately retreated in a sorry state. The others were shocked. It was obvious that Zichun, who was in the 5-strength state, had the absolute upper hand. If August didn't run, he would probably die. Phoebe and the others were extremely shocked. Fortunately, there were many people this time. If there were only one or two, they would probably be scared away when they saw such a scene. This combat strength is too terrifying. August retreated. Zichun did not chase after him. He held the bone stick in his hand and his gaze wandered among the crowd. Finally, it fell on Ape. You, get over here and die. Zichun's behavior was obviously a direct provocation. This made Ape's face become extremely gloomy. However, looking at August's miserable appearance, he didn't think that he had the absolute ability to kill Zichun. Therefore, he said directly, "Everyone, let's join forces. Kill him, and the treasure will be obtained by our own ability." Chapter 5087. Hubert sneered and walked out of the crowd. He looked at Zichun with cold eyes. He no longer suppressed his desire to seize the treasure. There were no rules here, and he could kill indefinitely. Zichun smiled mockingly at Hubert, then hooked his finger provocatively. "Come here if you have the ability. Get lost if you don't." Zichun really looked down on Hubert. A guy who only knew how to play tricks was destined to have no future. Even if he died here today, Hubert would not be able to get his things. Of course, Zichun was still very depressed that he had been trapped by such a person and had no way out. "Humph, little thing. Do you really think I can't kill you?" No matter how shrewd Ape Bert was, he could not tolerate being humiliated by a 5-strength realm cultivator in front of so many people. "You're just an ant." He rushed directly at Zichun, and the energy around him surged quickly. Zichun gripped the bone staff in his hand tightly. The blood in his body was almost boiling, full of powerful energy. Dong! His heart was still beating vigorously, providing strength to his body. Boom! The first strike of the staff smashed down, and a large amount of light scattered. Hubert had just stepped forward when his body retreated. The power contained in Zichun's attack surprised him. As far as he knew, the reason why Ogiest was defeated was only because he was weak. Zichun tapped his foot, and the power in his body erupted. The ground exploded, and he used the recoil to soar into the air. He took the initiative to attack Hubert. It had to be said that it was all because of Hubert that he could reach this point. This person's combat strength was not very good, but he was very scheming. Therefore, he had to die. Hubert clenched his fists and stretched out his arms to block. With another explosion of energy, Hubert was sent flying. Then, Zichun attacked again. The blood in his body circulated quickly. His heart provided a lot of energy for this battle. Puff! The staff fell for the 3rd time. Hubert coughed out blood and was sent flying. There was a hint of shock in his eyes. The crowd in the distance was also in an uproar. They were very surprised. However, no one made a move. Everyone just stood there and watched. Of course, it wasn't because they had to abide by some kind of rule of one-on-one combat. It was because if one of them died, there would be one less competitor for the treasure. Marcus was extremely shocked. He did not expect Zichun to be so powerful and terrifying. Zichun closed in step by step, and before he knew it, he was already far away from the cave. Beside him, Ogiest's face was gloomy. He had yet to recover from his injuries. Seeing this scene, he had some thoughts in his heart. In the next moment, he quickly rushed forward, intending to join forces with Ape Bert. Scram! Zichun shouted loudly, smashing the bone stick in his hand towards Ogiest. Bang! Ogiest was sent flying again, spurting out another mouthful of blood. He had a feeling that Zichun was stronger than before. Right now, Zichun also had a feeling that he was becoming more and more powerful. He even had a strong illusion that he could break through today. He had advanced from the 5 forces state to the 6 forces state. Therefore, He gradually distanced himself from the cave entrance because he wanted to give it a try. When Ogiest went forward and was defeated, it showed a fact to everyone, and that was to join forces. There was no doubt that he had made a good start. However, the others did not seem to appreciate it, and were still watching. In other words, they were waiting for Zichun to kill 8-Bert first before making a move. Zichun displayed a powerful killing power. 8-Bert was gradually losing. He repeatedly spurted out blood and shouted, "Everyone, I've already lured him over. Why don't you make a move?" There was some hidden meaning in his words. If everyone joined forces, they would naturally be able to kill Zichun. On the other hand, if they did not make a move at this moment, Zichun would definitely retreat, and 8-Bert would be able to survive. He wanted to snatch the treasure, but he was definitely not a desperado. In any case, he still had a certain status in Pofa City. There was no need for him to lose his life here for worldly possessions. Everyone present was a shrewd person and could naturally tell what 8-Bert was trying to say. Therefore, they didn't wait any longer and walked forward. However, it was not very likely that everyone would swarm up and instantly kill Zichun. After all, they had not yet decided who to join forces with. After all, there were only a few treasures, while there were many people. As such, the 6 Powers Realm cultivators all walked out. At the same time, the others behind them could see that a decisive battle was about to break out, so they once again retreated and distanced themselves from the battlefield. However, in the next moment, only 2 people truly walked out and charged towards Zichun. The 3 of them joined forces. 8-Bert was injured and was mainly supporting. Boom! Powerful energy surged out. Facing 3 6 Powers Realm cultivators, Zichun did not fear them at all. Under the powerful shockwaves, Zichun's bone staff descended and knocked back one of the 6 Powers Realm cultivators. Wong! At that moment, another 6 Powers Realm cultivator attacked, and a strange energy fell on Zichun's body. Zichun's body once again became like a piece of paper and started to violently distort, as if he could disappear at any moment. At that moment, a surge of energy surged out from his heart and changed the situation, allowing him to completely recover. Therefore, Zichun turned around and smashed his bone staff to the side. Boom! The energy sputtered, and the 6 Powers Realm cultivator was also sent flying. Die! Zichun continued to charge towards 8-Bert. If he could kill one person today, he hoped that it would be 8-Bert. 8-Bert seemed to have noticed this, so he intentionally lured Zichun out. It had to be said that he dared to do this even though he was injured, which was undoubtedly equivalent to pulling chestnuts out of the fire. After being carelessly hit, 8-Bert had almost lost half of his life here. He did not dare to be careless anymore and immediately retreated into the distance. This time, he did not go forward no matter what. As for the previous 2 people, because they had lost 8-Bert's support, Zichun seized the opportunity to forcefully block an attack and injure one of them. While the other party retreated, he attacked the last person with all his strength. 1 against 3, and he was completely suppressing them. When everyone saw this scene, they were shocked and had strange expressions on their faces. It was obvious that Zichun's body was also strange. When he encountered the true force attack earlier, it was clearly about to disappear. Why did it block it again? Just as they were shocked, Zichun planned to retreat. Because the power of the heartbeat was weakening, which proved that his guess was wrong. This time, he would not break through because of this. The most likely possibility was that the anger from before had triggered the resonance of the heart. Therefore, sensing that something was wrong, Zichun turned around and ran. Seeing this, the others panicked and rushed forward. Unfortunately, they were already some distance away from Zichun. It was obviously too late to chase now. Under everyone's unwilling gaze, Zichun successfully ran into the mine. Chapter 5088. After feeling the lack of energy in his body, Zichun ran into the mine. Next, the battle would be held here. The battle to the death would also take place here. Including 8-Bert, the 3 injured 6 Powers Realm cultivators all had fear in their eyes. Zichun's combat power was too strong. Marcus's emotions fluctuated greatly. This was because Zichun's combat power was too strong. What was wrong with having such a person by his side? He could not understand 8-Bert's actions. The others watched this scene indifferently from the side, especially the spellbreakers. They could not help but mock them. They're too stupid. So many of them can't beat one person. Exactly. They're complete idiots. Zichun is really unlucky to be targeted by such idiots. Of course, they were not speaking up for Zichun, but to ridicule the spellbreakers. To them, perhaps the greatest joy in life was bullying spirit spellcasters. They did not fight back when beaten or scolded. Of course, Zichun was an exception, and this exception was about to be killed by them soon. I say, you're not afraid, are you? Phoebe sneered at the Six Powers Realm cultivators. A group of people can't beat one person. Are you really trash? One of the Six Powers Realm cultivators finally could not hold it in and said unhappily, then why don't I see you fight? Phoebe laughed and said, because we like to be open and aboveboard. Unlike you who like to play dirty. Go and ask Zichun. Although we failed a few times, we were open and aboveboard. Unlike you, each and every one of you is incomparably shady. You deserve to be suppressed by us. Although the Six Powers Realm cultivator was angry, he did not dare to say anything. The others were the same. Everyone looked at the mine with an ugly expression. Spicer said, Zichun's situation is somewhat abnormal. His previous strength was more like some kind of strange spell, but there should be a time limit. His sudden entry into the mine should mean that the spell has disappeared. This speculation caused many voices to echo. Zichun's strength was too ridiculous. Even many of the 6 realms of strength could not fight against 3 of them at once. Go in and kill him, Apebert said, but that brat is very cunning. We can work in pairs. His words successfully attracted a wave of mockery. However, Apebert didn't care at all. He treated them as if they didn't exist. It was almost impossible for him to gain an advantage over these lawbreakers. These people seemed to be at odds with each other and fought for themselves. However, once they were provoked, they would unite. As for spirit spellcasters like them, they seemed to be united. However, when there were benefits and troubles, they would split up. The others also nodded. They could still accept the suggestion of 2 people in a group. Thus, everyone made their own arrangements and walked towards the mine. Watching them leave, Phoebe asked, how do you know about Zichun's situation? Spicer shook his head and said, I don't know either. I just guessed. Butterball Khan asked, what if I'm wrong? Spike laughed, then I'm not the one who died? When the other lawbreakers heard this, they all laughed out loud. The spirit spellcasters looked at each other at the side. Perhaps only Zichun could deal with these arrogant fellows. Unfortunately, Zichun was going to die now. Zichun entered the mine and began to go deeper. He was really familiar with this place. He came to the place with the kill crystals. After arriving here, he looked around and found that there were many more kill crystals. Thus, he used the slaughter spirit to clear out an empty area, until he found the large piece of kill crystal. He first cupped his fists at the kill crystal and apologized. If he could successfully avoid this calamity this time, he naturally wouldn't disturb the indulgence of these existences. However, if he couldn't, he had no other choice. This time, he might die. However, before he died, he had to drag some existences down with him so that they wouldn't have schemed against him in vain. Zichun walked forward and came to the edge of the cave entrance. He hid here. He believed that those 6 realms would definitely come. Holding the bone staff tightly, Zichun's eyes flashed with killing intent. Someone was coming. This kid is really good at hiding. Don't make any noise. Be careful. That kid is strange. 2 6 realms were walking towards him. Zichun held his breath and the bone staff in his hand also fell silent. Step by step, the other party was coming. Buzz. The moment the 2 of them appeared, Zichun's weapon smashed down fiercely with a large amount of light. The other party was shocked and immediately blocked. Bang! A strong shock wave. One of them was sent flying by Zichun. This kid is here. The other 6 forces realm cultivator let out a cry of surprise before charging towards Zichun. In Zichun's hand, the bone staff moved again and smashed down on the other party's head. This place wasn't big, but it was enough for Zichun to use the bone staff. Infinite light shone. In this dark cave, Zichun's eyes were shining, looking very strange. Bang! The second 6 realms was also sent flying. Then, the slaughter spirit moved and turned into a stream of light, completely catching the other party off guard. Puff. It pierced through a person's head and then quickly left. Die. Zichen quickly moved forward and didn't give the other party time to react. The bone staff smashed down again. The energy was stimulated by the bone staff, causing Zichen's attack to have the strength of a Six Realms cultivator. Boom. A strong shock wave and a terrifying aura circulated. The Six Realms cultivator was sent flying again. The slaughter spirit followed closely behind. This time, Zichen didn't hold back and used all kinds of methods. Puff. Another person was hit. A second hole appeared on the other party's head. Naturally, the injury was very serious. Zichen continued to move forward. It was still the same person. During this time, the other Six Realms cultivator attacked, but it was blocked by Zichen. After the third attack, the slaughter spirit attacked. The Six Realms cultivator screamed and then fell down dead. Because he already possessed true power, his death left behind a real corpse in this world. When the other Six Realms cultivator saw this, he immediately shouted, "You're courting death." Then, he used all his strength and looked like he was going to fight to the death with Zichen. However, when Zichen swung the bone staff, the other party used the force to retreat and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Zichen was stunned. He looked at the corpse on the ground and immediately chased after it. He was very familiar with this place. However, he neglected the strong desire to live of a Six Realms cultivator. As the other party ran, he shouted that Zichen was here. He didn't beg for mercy. Instead, he shouted to attract more people. When Zichen saw this, he could only retreat and walk in another direction. He hid and continued to wait for the ambush. The Six Realms cultivator ran out. His shout shocked everyone and caused an uproar. Chapter 5089. Hearing this news, everyone was in disbelief. How powerful were the Six Forces state cultivators? How could they be killed just like that? However, they quickly thought of the injured Six Forces state cultivators. If the two sides really wanted to fight one-on-one, Zichen could really kill them. Now, it was true. Embark, who was a little worried that he would miss the opportunity to heal his injuries, couldn't help but change his expression when he heard the news. He secretly rejoiced. If he went in, that wolf cub would definitely kill him. Fortunately, it wasn't him. Hearing the commotion, the other Six Forces state cultivators also rushed out of the cave. During this time, Zichen seized the opportunity and killed another one. This time, everyone panicked. After walking out, they still had lingering fears. It was too dangerous. The three of us will work together. Embark's injuries were almost completely healed. He said, "This way, if we work together, we can at least save our lives." Yes, they could save their lives. This was the current consensus of everyone. They didn't want to kill Zichen for the time being, and it was obviously impossible for them to leave just like that. This time, it was no longer just a matter of the supreme treasure. Once they retreated and Zichen broke through to the Six Forces state, what awaited them would definitely be endless trouble. As expected, they were mocked and ridiculed by the spell breakers in the distance. They could only kill their way into the mine in groups of 3 with dark faces. This time, the effect was good. With the 3 of them working together, there were no more casualties. At the same time, they also dispelled the idea of being greedy. During this time, they repeatedly called out and called everyone over. Zichen began to be forced to flee. As long as everyone worked together, he had no chance of winning. He laughed self-deprecatingly. Perhaps this was the power of unity. Damn it! Zichen's face was gloomy as he walked into a mine. But soon, he reached the end. When he turned around again, there was already someone at the entrance of the cave. Zichen held the bone rod in his hand and smashed it forward. A large amount of light scattered, and the Six Forces state cultivator who had just appeared at the entrance of the cave flew out. However, before Zichen could rush forward, 2 more people stepped forward. Dazzling attacks appeared in his field of vision. Zichen took a few steps back and stared at the 2 of them. Haha, it's done. It's finally done with this brat. One of the Six Forces realm cultivators laughed out loud because Zichen had nowhere to go. Rays of light flashed, and the Six Forces state cultivators walked out from behind. In the blink of an eye, there were 4 groups of 12 people. When they saw the desperate Zichun, a sinister smile immediately appeared on their faces. In such a small mine, they were confident that they could kill Zichun. Zichun looked at the crowd coldly. In the dark mine, his eyes were exceptionally bright. "Brat, you have nowhere to run now, right?" Hubert walked out of the darkness and stared coldly at Zichun. Zichun gripped the bone staff tightly. "Everyone, let's not wait any longer. Let's attack together." Ape Bert said, "If we let him escape this time, I'm sure all of you know the consequences." Everyone's eyes turned cold. He naturally needed the supreme treasure, but the most important thing now was to take Zichun's life. Everyone began to close in, and their auras approached. Zichun smiled happily, but it was also cruel. In the end, there was a hint of madness in his smile. "Everyone, let's die together." Boom. His 5 forces state aura erupted, but it was obviously not enough in front of the 6 forces state cultivators. In the next moment, the massacre spirit attacked. It flew to the stone walls on both sides like a stream of light. Puff! It completely sank into the wall, and then quickly shuttled back and forth. Suddenly, the mine trembled as if it was about to collapse. "Naive, do you think you can kill us like this?" Ape Bert said disdainfully. "Even if this place completely collapses, it can't kill a 6 forces state cultivator. Moreover, with your strength, you want to collapse a mountain? Dream on." The slaughter spirit flew out of the stone wall and headed to the other side. It also disappeared into the stone wall. The shaking continued, and gravel rustled down from above. Ape Bert said impatiently, "Everyone, let's do it now." The other 6 forces state cultivators closed in again. Boom. At this moment, the killing intent on both sides completely erupted. "Haha, you've triggered the killing crystal. Kid, you're still so naive. Do you really think that killing intent can do anything to us?" Seeing this, a 6 forces state cultivator laughed disdainfully. However, Ape Bert's expression suddenly changed as if he had thought of something. He looked at Zichun. Zichun said, "That's right. It's that place." In the boundless killing intent, an arm suddenly flew out. In an instant, the killing intent in the place became bone-chilling as if it was going to penetrate into the marrow. Everyone's expression changed when they saw that. The moment the arm appeared, the killing intent in the place seemed to have increased by a level. "There's a foreign object in the killing crystal. Retreat," someone exclaimed. At this moment, a strange phenomenon appeared. The hand seemed to have become a living thing and grabbed at the 6 forces state cultivator in front of it. It grabbed the man's neck firmly. "Ah, save me!" the 6 forces state cultivator shouted. "Chi, chi." However, on both sides, there was a constant wave of killing intent, accompanied by one broken object after another. There were corpses and broken weapons. It was as if someone had dug out a battlefield and skulls were rolling around. The original mine was immediately filled with killing intent. Everyone felt as if they were in a place of 1,000-year-old ice. The killing intent was bone-chilling and terrifying. Following that, strange phenomena appeared. An exotic beast that could fly flapped its wings and captured a 6 forces state cultivator. There was also a huge creature that stomped at the 6 forces state cultivator. A weapon flew into the air and cut the 6 forces state cultivator's body open from the middle. Blood spurted out. Zichun stood there with the killing spirit floating in front of him, blocking the killing intent. At first, he could still distinguish between illusion and illusion. Some were illusions, and some were reality. However, in the end, more killing intent filled the place. The killing spirit began to tremble. Some of the killing intent penetrated its defenses and entered his body. Zichun gradually lost himself. Boom, boom. In the mine, rumbling sounds could be heard continuously. The killing intent was like a surging river. Everyone was lost in it. Endless killing intent entered their bodies and destroyed them. The killing spirit was born to devour killing intent. However, there was too much killing intent here. It had just swallowed a mutated beast when another mutated beast flew past it and entered Zichun's body. Endless killing intent entered his body. Zichun could not hold on any longer. His body swayed and fell. The killing intent continued to enter his body, destroying his life force. As if he was attacked by true power, his body became a piece of paper again. It began to twist violently, as if it would be torn apart at any time. Just as his body was about to collapse from the intense twisting, his heart let out a thumping sound. Chapter 5090. I've been away for a few days now. I can't rush out the manuscript today. Tomorrow I'll rest for a day and save up 2 new chapters. The day after tomorrow I'll have to take the bus for a whole day, so I won't have time to write. If everything goes as planned, I'll update on the 27th. Thunder Marshal has taken 3 days off. It's currently in progress. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 5091. Thump. Zichen's heart was beating like a drum, strong and powerful. The murderous illusions in the surroundings were completely still. Zichen was lying on the ground, his body twisted and motionless. Thump. The heart beat again, strong and powerful. The still space trembled and returned to normal. However, this time, the murderous intent was no longer wreaking havoc in the surroundings. Instead, it was directed at Zichen. This time, it was not active, but passive. Zichen's heart seemed to have turned into a whirlpool, using Zichen's paper figure as a medium to devour the surrounding murderous intent. All of the murderous intent, as well as the anomalies within, were absorbed by the black hole formed by the heart. Pa, pa, pa. Some crystals were still exploding, and the murderous intent within them was forcibly taken away. At this moment, the heart was like a terrifying predator. However, it was also because of this that those who had fainted were able to catch their breaths and were not killed by the murderous intent. Pa, pa. Previously, it was only at this cave entrance. However, as time passed, the other caves, including the ones that contained the murderous intent, were also cracking. There were also some who were in the other caves. They were in groups of 3 and were still looking for Zichen. Seeing this, everyone's expression changed. They looked at the murderous intent that was surging out in surprise. However, the murderous intent did not wreak havoc after it appeared. It was as if it was being guided by some kind of energy and was calmly heading in a certain direction. In the pitch-black cave, there were occasional explosions. All of the murderous intent gathered in a certain direction in an orderly manner. The cave was filled with murderous intent, but it was dead silent. This strange scene caused everyone to feel apprehensive. At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly emerged from the depths of the cave. There was some kind of consciousness in this aura. It was as if a powerful existence had woken up from a deep sleep. The 6 realms did not know what was happening. The sounds disappeared, and the murderous intent stopped exploding. The pressure in the cave became even more terrifying. The murderous intent that was gathering in an orderly manner also stopped at this moment. Then, a second aura appeared. It came from a different place, and there seemed to be a consciousness in it as well. The 2 auras collided. Everyone felt their hearts sink. Their hearts became incomparably uncomfortable, as if they were being squeezed by a pair of strong hands, gradually suffocating them. Pooh! Someone coughed out blood, his expression horrified. The 2 different thoughts seemed to be communicating with each other, or perhaps they were examining each other and confronting each other. This confrontation didn't last for long before one of the wills retreated. Then, the second thought faded away. The originally still killing intent continued to gather in front of him. However, no more killing crystals exploded along the way. It was as if the 2 auras had reached a consensus. These killing intents emerged from the various minds and eventually converged at Zichen's location, where they were completely absorbed by his heart. Dong! In the quiet mine, everyone was lying on the ground. He was motionless, and it was unclear whether he was dead or alive. Only his heart was beating, strong and powerful. Dong! When all the killing intent had been absorbed by the heart, a powerful energy was released from the heart. This energy converged into Zichen's body, as if it was pouring real flesh and blood into a paper person's body. Zichen's body began to expand. This expansion was just a manifestation of power, but it didn't make him look bloated. His body radiated light in all directions, giving people a feeling of power. The killing intent stopped attacking, and the Six Powers realm gradually woke up. They had comprehended the true power rules and had a strong vitality, so they wouldn't die easily. When they woke up, they saw Zichen lying there in his expanding body. Countless energy revolved around Zichen's body, releasing a powerful aura. No one knew what had happened, but looking at the situation ahead, it was obviously not something good. With so much energy surrounding one's body, even a pig could have a breakthrough. Everyone was very clear about what Zichen's breakthrough meant. Without looking at each other, a Six Powers realm immediately stepped forward. With a wave of his hand, an attack imbued with true power went straight for Zichen. Wong. As the attack approached, a real space appeared around Zichen, blocking the attack. The Six Powers realm was slightly startled and stepped forward to investigate. He touched Zichen's protection. They were separated by a ray of light, but it was as if they were in two different spaces. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and do it." Bert shouted angrily, stepped forward, and punched forward. A fiery aura surged on his fist, and the power of true intent poured out. Boom! When his fist hit the light shield, an extremely strong rebounding force shook his body backward. Kill! Bert's eyes shone with a cold light. He stepped forward again and punched. Boundless true power surged like a huge wave, trying to drown Zichen, but it was useless. The protection space didn't budge. After a few punches, Bert looked at the intact space and became anxious. "What are you all waiting for? I didn't see that he was about to break through." It would have been better if he hadn't said that. As soon as he said that, the Six Powers realm cultivators wanted to retreat. Seeing this, Bert was amused. "Are you all a bunch of idiots? How did you reach the Six Powers realm? Once Zichen breaks through, do you think he will only kill me and let you go? Stop dreaming. We are the ones who forced him to this point. When the time comes, every single one of you will be counted as one. No one will be able to escape." Looking at the hesitant crowd, his eyes flashed with a cold light. "Now, you only have one choice. Follow me and kill him. Otherwise, everyone will die." Everyone's expressions changed. This situation was beyond their expectations. At the moment, they were in a dilemma. Damn it, don't just stand there. It's not too late to kill now. Otherwise, everything will be too late. Bert was really anxious because once Zichen broke through, he would definitely be the first to kill. Therefore, he couldn't be bothered with the crowd and charged forward with all his strength. Buzz. At this moment, a stream of light suddenly appeared and pierced Bert's head with a poof. Bert stood there in a daze. There were still remnants of true power on his fist. His head began to bleed. This time, it was no longer a superficial wound. The blood that flowed out was accompanied by vitality. Just one blow took away half of his life. Swish! The light flashed again. It was the slaughter spirit. This time, it carried a terrifying lethality. Bert did not react. A second bloody hole appeared on his head. The true power on his fist completely dissipated. The true power energy in his body also disappeared. He knelt straight on the ground. His life was about to come to an end. Swish! The light was still dancing. It was no longer a pure slaughter spirit. It already contained power. It's soul power. This is soul power. Seeing this, a Six Powers realm cultivator exclaimed. He has soul power. Chapter 5092. Zichen was still lying on the ground, motionless. The protective space had not been broken, but the slaughter spirit contained another kind of energy. Everyone was very familiar with this energy. It was the soul power of the lawbreaker, mysterious and powerful. For many years, the lawbreakers, as the natives of this place, used the laws of Broken Law City and their own soul power to suppress the spirit spellcasters, causing them to always lower their heads. Therefore, they were very familiar with this power. Seeing it now, they were shocked and terrified. If this power came from Zichen, then Zichen was no longer a pure lawbreaker. Spirit spellcaster and soul power were the same body. This was an even stronger soul destroyer. Everyone was shocked. Bert, who was already kneeling on the ground and did not have much life left, was filled with regret after hearing these exclamations. He finally knew the reason for all of this. Perhaps the soul power treasure did not exist. The reason why Zichun was able to block the lawbreaker's attack was because he also had soul power in his body, but it had not awakened. It had to be said that before he died, 8-Bert had infinitely guessed the truth. Unfortunately, it was all too late. 8-Bert's heart was filled with regret and unwillingness. Originally, he had his own mansion and also had many subordinates. Although life was boring, his life was not in danger. But now, he even lost his life. Sure enough, the first person Zichun wanted to kill was him. Unfortunately, there was no regret to speak of. When he fell, he faintly saw Zichun move. How should everyone deal with the awakened Shadow Destroyer? Unfortunately, this was not a problem that 8-Bert should consider. Zichun did move. He woke up from his coma. His body was filled with powerful energy, as if it would never be exhausted, endlessly growing and multiplying. His heart was beating strongly, and energy was constantly gushing out from his heart, converging in all parts of his body. However, he had not broken through yet, because he still lacked a trace of comprehension of the laws. Only by comprehending could he reach the Six Forces realm. However, he now had the foundation to resist the Six Forces realm. That was soul power. After falling unconscious, his consciousness seemed to have become stronger again. A portion of the soul power that was originally in his mind and could not be mobilized had already become controllable. He glanced at the fallen Albert, then glanced at the floating slaughter spirit beside him. He seemed to have guessed something. Looking ahead, all the Six Powers realm cultivators were looking at him in fear. Between them, there was a guardian. Zichun had already awakened, but the guardian had not disappeared. Buzz. Zichun activated his soul power. He activated the slaughter spirit with his soul power. Boundless killing intent burst out from the slaughter spirit as it flew forward. At such a close distance, a Six Forces state cultivator only had time to raise his hand before his head was pierced through. It was too fast. There was no way to react. This was also the greatest advantage that spell breakers had over spirit spellcasters. Zichun, on the other hand, had a rare item like the slaughter spirit, so his attack power was even stronger. It could be said that in the past, Zichun had controlled the spirit of slaughter by relying on the connection between the two parties. This time, however, he was using his true soul power. It was like spending real gold and platinum, and the effect was naturally obvious. The Six Realms cultivator screamed in pain. He felt as if his soul was about to collapse. Pooh! The light flashed again, and the slaughter spirit walked back and forth. The Six Realms cultivator's body fell backward. When the others saw this, there was a hint of fear on their faces. The killing intent around them immediately dissipated, and they ran to the back. At this moment, everyone was terrified. Zichun glanced at the two dead people. While taking their gains, he chased after them. In the mine, there were mournful screams one after another. The Six Realms cultivators died one after another. The others were waiting outside, including those Six Realms spellbreakers. During this time, someone sent a message back saying that they had found Zichun and were about to surround him. If nothing unexpected happened, Zichun would definitely die. Therefore, everyone was waiting for the news of Zichun's death. As long as Zichun died, the real battle for the treasure would break out. During this time, the entire mine seemed to tremble without warning. Everyone's heart tightened, but the abnormality quickly disappeared. No one paid much attention to it and waited quietly. In the end, they saw the Six Realms cultivators running out in fear. As they ran, they shouted for the Soul Destroyer. Everyone was puzzled and did not understand what had happened. At this moment, two bloody holes suddenly appeared on the head of a terrified Six Realms cultivator, and his body fell straight to the ground. A person appeared behind him. It was Zichun. Run! The Six Realms cultivators ran frantically with only fear in their eyes. Along the way, their companions had already fallen and died. Zichun was like the Grim Reaper who reaped lives. He followed behind them and took one life after another. Some of them still had some sense. They soared into the sky and ran into the distance. Some had already forgotten their flying skills and ran straight for the crowd. The slaughter spirit followed closely behind. With 2 thuds, a 6 realms cultivator fell. This time, the people behind saw it clearly. He also finally understood what those exclamations meant. Shadow Destroyer. Those who had spiritual techniques and soul power were extremely rare, and their status was even more noble. Seeing Zichen's killing methods, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone was stunned. Shadow Destroyer? How can it be a Shadow Destroyer? Phoebe exclaimed, his face full of disbelief. Doesn't he only have a soul power treasure? Why does he have the soul power of a spell breaker? Butterball and Kant also found it unbelievable. Exclamations rose and fell all around. No one believed that all of this was real. But the 6 realms cultivators had used their lives to verify it. It could not be fake. Looking at the real corpses on the ground, everyone was shocked. All the spiritual casters in the 6 forces realm had run away. To them, staying here was a dead end. Those who could not escape had also become corpses. Zichen chased for a while and stopped. After all, there were too many people running around. He could not catch up to many. The crowd had already dispersed. Everyone looked at Zichen in shock. At this moment, they saw the birth of a Shadow Destroyer. Not to mention the spirit casters, even the spell breakers had a look of disbelief on their faces. It seems that the Black Storm back then was not a soul power treasure, but his own soul. Spicer's expression changed. It's just that he had not awakened then. Now, he has. Obviously, he had guessed wrong. But because of this, he had harmed many people. At the very least, 8-Bert and the others had targeted Zichen because of that soul power treasure. In the end, they had lost their lives for nothing and did not obtain anything. At this moment, Zichen's gaze swept towards Spicer. The spirit casters of the 6 forces realm had all run away. The only person who had an absolute grudge against Zichen was Spike. Both sides faced each other. It was hard to say whether they would live or die. Looking at Zichen's meaningful expression, Spicer's expression changed. Then, he turned and left. He flew into the air. Without knowing what was going on with Zichen, he clearly did not dare to go against him. Spicer flew into the air and ran away. But Phoebe and the others could not do this. They had an even greater grudge against Zichen. Zichen walked forward. "Run!" Phoebe shouted and turned to run. Chapter 5093. Phoebe and the others ran away as fast as they could because they would lose their lives if they did not run. Their feud with Zichen had long reached a point where they would not rest until one of them died. Along the way, there was no lack of mockery. D***M. How did he become a Shadow Destroyer? They could not figure it out. Lu Yao had fled early in the morning. Zichen's strength had long exceeded his understanding. Zichen moved forward and chased after the enemy. "Butterball, run! What are you waiting for?" Phoebe and the others were running away. When they turned their heads and saw that Kant was still standing there foolishly, they all shouted. Obviously, they did not dare to stop and could only shout as they ran. After a moment of hesitation, Butterball and Kant stretched out their arms and stopped Zichen. "Stop!" Zichen looked at Kant. "Can you let them go? I'll give you martial crystals." Kant immediately took out a piece of martial crystals. "Although I only have one now, I'll be able to get the other 5 soon in exchange for their lives." They had no choice but to do so, because in this situation, none of the people present had the ability to fight against Zichen. Run? If Zichen was determined to kill, there was nowhere to run. Therefore, he could only think of this method. Zichen stopped and glanced at Kant. Of course, Zichen had nothing to say to Butterball. The other party's actions that day could be considered as timely help. He stepped forward and patted the other party's shoulder. "I've said it before. Among all of you, you're the one who can live the longest. Follow me from now on." When Zichen said this in the past, it was a great humiliation to all the spellbreakers. However, it was undoubtedly an honor to say it today. Because Zichen was no longer who he used to be. He had become a Shadow Destroyer. This should be the noblest existence in Spellbreaker City. Those so-called rules were a complete joke in front of him. Among the crowd, Marcus was extremely excited. During Zichen's most difficult time, who still believed in Zichun and was willing to help him. Other than Butterball, it was Marcus. The crowd had not left yet, but they had dispersed far away. To the people present, the Shadow Destroyer seemed to be a legendary existence. Now that he was able to see it with his own eyes, it was truly shocking. Zichun turned around and glanced at the mineral vein. This was really a blessed land. Ever since he came here, he had resolved many crises. If he left this time, he might never return. He walked to the entrance of the cave and clasped his fist towards the killing crystal mine. The others in the distance were puzzled, but they were only puzzled. No one dared to ask. After that, the crowd dispersed. Everyone had left. This included Marcus as well. Zichun was already a Shadow Destroyer. His status was even higher than spellbreakers of the same level. Once he returned, no one would be able to use rules to suppress him. Butterball and Kant were still there. It wasn't that he didn't want to leave, but he didn't dare to, because Zichun hadn't said anything. Zichun approached and glanced at him. "Let's go too." Butterball followed behind Zichun, his heart filled with emotions. It was dark. Zichun decided to stop and rest. Butterball went nearby to get firewood. Zichun sat cross-legged and felt his body. His body was full of energy, but he hadn't broken through. He was still at the 5 strengths realm. The bonfire rose, illuminating the surroundings. The others had probably left in the dark. As far as they could see, they were the only bonfire. There were spellbreaker beasts around at night, but they obviously didn't dare to come close. Whether it was Zichun or Kant, their auras had a deterrent effect on the spellbreaker beasts. The sky brightened. Zichun got up, and the two continued on their way. A few days later, they returned to their original encampment. Miao Pengfei and Hu Zheng received the news and immediately ran out. After Zichun left, the two were very worried. After all, many people had chased after him. Among them, the lowest realm was at the 4 strengths realm. But when they saw those people fleeing into the city in a sorry state a few days ago, the two heaved a sigh of relief. Zichun stayed here for a day. Butterball and Kant watched as Zichun chatted and laughed with the 2 weak 3 strengths realm cultivators. Then, the two entered Spellbreaker City. When Zichun appeared, he saw many people. These people looked at the two of them curiously. Of course, they were mainly looking at Zichun. Not long after, 2 people appeared in front of them. Zichun had never seen the 2 of them before, but he could guess the identity of one of them. Eden. Back then, Hubert always mentioned this name. Last time, in order to ask for something on him, he even used this name to pressure him. As expected, the tall man said with a smile, "You are Zichun. You are right. I am Eden." Eden, 7 strengths realm, spirit caster. The other person should be the spellbreaker. He looked at Zichun and said, "I am Bosch." Eden continued, "Zichun, I heard about what happened to you. I didn't expect Hubert to do such a stupid thing. Fortunately, you killed him. Otherwise, I would definitely punish him severely. How dare he play tricks under my nose? He is simply courting death." Eden chuckled and said, "But it's good. Hubert is dead, so his mansion is empty. You can go there and take his place." Compared to Eden, Bosch was much more direct. "Come with me. We will protect you from now on." Only then did Kant realize that the 2 of them were here to rope in Zichun. Thinking about it, since such a shadow destroyer had appeared, they naturally had to rope him in. Kant, who understood, felt that something was wrong. Why were there only 2 of them? Where were the others? One had to know that in Spellbreaker City, there were many 7 strengths realm cultivators. Why didn't they come? Or was it some kind of tacit agreement? Zichun cupped his fists at the 2 of them and said, "Zichun appreciates the good intentions of the 2 lords. But after Zichun entered the city, I have already gotten used to my own residence. I don't plan on moving for the time being." That's good, that's good." Eden did not insist. He nodded and said, "The Yuan mansion is open to you at any time. You can go whenever you want." Bosch also nodded at Zichun. Then, the 2 7 strengths realm cultivators left just like that. This made Khan a little confused. It was that simple? Not saying more? Wasn't this kind of recruitment a little too insincere? Zichun did not think much of it. Before he came, he had already asked Kant what he did on a daily basis. Kant told him that spell breakers like them had almost no rules. If there were no special circumstances, no one would care about them. They could do whatever they wanted. Now that Zichen had become a shadow destroyer, he naturally received the same treatment. If Zichen wanted to, he could stay in his room for a few years without coming out. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had energy. Spellbreaker City was not responsible for distributing energy to them for free. Zichen returned to his residence, which was still next door to Marcos. He informed Kant that he would come over early the next morning. He was going out to hunt. This time, Zichen wanted to hunt a 6-strength realm spellbreaker beast. Chapter 5094. Zichen returned to his residence and saw that Marcus's door was closed. He did not know where he went. Walking into the room, he began to count his spoils. This time, he killed several 6-powers realm cultivators. They all had storage items. Zichen opened them one by one and saw pure energy and spiritual energy. Other than that, there were also a few martial crystals. As for martial crystals, there was none. Next, he began to count the pure energy and spiritual energy. He had to admit that this way of obtaining them was faster. During this time, he also found a few special materials. He did not know what they were for, so Zichen kept them. The next morning, Butterball and Khan arrived on time. The two of them walked out of the city. This time, they were obviously going in a different direction. Along the way, when people saw Zichen, their expressions were filled with respect. Although Zichen was still in the 5-powers realm, his battle strength was no weaker than that of the 6-powers realm. Looking at the silent Butterball, Zichen asked, "What, you're not happy?" Butterball and Kant looked at Zichen, wanting to say something but stopped. Zichen smiled and said, "Did those fellows talk about you again? You didn't tell them that you saved their lives?" Butterball and Kant shook their heads. "Not that." Zichen asked curiously, "Then what is it?" Butterball did not answer immediately. After a slight hesitation, he asked, "Do you know why only 2 people came to recruit you yesterday?" Zichen laughed. "What's the difference?" "According to my estimation, there should be a lot." Butterball said, "In this shattering law city, there are many big and small factions. They fight with each other for resources, experts, and anything else that can be fought over." Looking at Zichen's expression, Kant continued, "But yesterday, only 2 people came. Don't you think it's strange?" Zichen smiled. "This should have nothing to do with me killing people, right?" Zichen had killed quite a number of 6-powers realm cultivators outside, so he did not hold back at all. Because of this, he offended the other 7 forces realm cultivators. As far as Zichen knew, this should be impossible. Butterball said, "That's not the reason. The main thing is, you will never be able to reach the 6 forces state in the future." "What?" Zichen looked at Butterball with a strange expression. Right now, he was only 1 step away from the 6 forces state. He could even feel that his body was filled with energy, and he was just short of comprehending the law. It's been a long time since a shadow destroyer appeared in Pofa City. Kant said, "Most of the shadow destroyers only exist in legends. But when I went back yesterday, Phoebe and the others told me that your condition is abnormal. It's an accidental awakening." He carefully looked at Zichen. "In this kind of situation, if you suddenly have spirit power and spiritual magic power, then you will have no hope of breaking through in this lifetime." Of course, Zichen did not agree with this point of view. However, he did not argue with Butterball. They concluded that you have no chance of reaching the 6 forces state, so they lost interest in you. No matter how strong a 5 forces state cultivator was, he was still a 5 forces state cultivator. The two left Pofa City and walked into the distance. Along the way, they met some people. When they saw the two of them, their faces would reveal strange expressions. It was rare to see a spellbreaker and a spiritual magic cultivator walking together. But after someone explained, they all came to a sudden realization, and the way they looked at Zichen changed. The two of them did not meet anyone else. In Butterball's words, very few people walked this path because it was only available to those in the 6 forces state. People like Lu Yao, who could come here at the 5 forces state, were few and far between, and he relied on his weapon and armor. Although he followed the 6 forces state cultivators, he only played a supporting role. But ever since Lu Yao lost his weapon and armor, he lost the right to come here. Even spellbreakers in the five forces state did not dare to come here casually. The two of them walked for more than 10 miles and met another team of 5. Kant. Someone in the team recognized Butterball and immediately called out. It was Spicer. This spellbreaker in the six forces state had attacked Zichen back then because of his wrong guess, which led to the massacre outside the mine. Butterball glanced at Zichen. Zichen nodded slightly. Kant jogged forward. Zichen scanned the area in front of him. Among the 5 people, there were 4 spellbreakers and 1 spiritual magic cultivator. This caused Zichen to be somewhat surprised. After hearing Spicer's explanation, the other party also looked at Zichen in surprise. After a while, Butterball walked over with Spicer following behind. He looked at Zichen and said, Zichen, you can come with us and let Kant go back. Zichen shook his head. I don't trust you. Spicer's eyes turned cold. Zichen said again, and once I suspect you, I might kill you. Spicer's expression changed. Don't kill him. Kant is a little stupid, but he's not a bad person. After saying that, Spicer turned and left. Obviously, he was really worried that Zichen would kill them. Both parties parted ways and did not walk the same path. If we continue walking forward, we will reach the six forces state spellbreaker beasts. Kongda pointed to the front, where there was a mountain range. The so-called six forces state lawbreaker beast was in the mountain range. Here, wherever there are mountains, there will be or veins. It's the same here. But because there are too many six forces state spellbreaker beasts and their numbers are too strong, no one dares to mine here. As they walked forward, Khan introduced the situation here to Zichen. It was said that a long time ago, a spellbreaker faction found a precious or vein. But before they could mine it, they lost several six forces state spellbreakers. So they could only find other factions to join forces and annihilate the spellbreaker beasts here. Under the leadership of the seven forces state spellbreaker beasts, they killed a group of spellbreaker beasts. But just a few days later, a second group of spellbreaker beasts came and killed everyone who was stationed here. After that, no other faction came to mine here. In the end, Kant said, if you're lucky, you can dig up some treasures here, such as martial crystals. Of course, for five forces state spellbreakers, martial crystals were still good stuff. But those who could come here were mostly six forces state spellbreakers. They did not come here to dig up a few martial crystals. The two of them walked into the mountains. Kongda's voice was noticeably softer, while Zichen's gaze swept the surroundings warily. He had never seen a six forces state spellbreaker beast. After walking for a few miles, Kant felt the pressure. His face turned pale. A bone stick appeared in Zichen's hand. He also felt a lot of pressure. After another kilometer, when the two of them were walking past a huge rock, a strange beast suddenly swooped down from above. It had a strange appearance. Its long teeth were like swords. It charged at Kant. Back off. As soon as Zichen said that, Kant immediately retreated. He held the bone stick tightly in his hand and smashed it forward. Buzz. Infinite power was injected into it. The bone stick began to vibrate, releasing a powerful aura. Bang! Chapter 5095. Zichen had never seen a law-breaking beast in the six forces state, so it should not be weak. Therefore, he did not hold back in his first attack. With one strike, the law-breaking beast flew backward. After landing, its head seemed to be in a daze. Zichen quickly went forward and struck again with the bone staff. This time, he used all his strength. While the beast was shaking its head, he struck again with the staff. The law-breaking beast howled and fell to the ground. Zichen followed in a flash. This time, he did not strike with the staff. Instead, he struck with his left palm. Light swirled around his palm. The light crisscrossed. It was an attack that he had comprehended. When it landed on the law-breaking beast, its skin was instantly cut open. But it was only a superficial wound. Zichen quickly retreated. Then, the slaughter spirit quickly went forward and sank into the law-breaking beast's head. Blood splattered. The howl turned into a scream. Ever since he had soul power, the slaughter spirit's power had become extraordinarily strong. Butterball and Kant looked ahead. Their eyes almost popped out. They watched as Zichen stepped forward and finished off the battle in a few moves. That relaxed expression of his was almost unbelievable. The law-breaking beast in the Six Forces state fell to the ground, motionless. Blood kept flowing out of its 7 orifices. Zichun held the bone staff and stood to the side. His face was slightly pale. He said, "It's indeed harder to kill than the Six Forces state." Just harder to kill? If other Six Forces state people heard this, they would probably want to die. When they went out, they would at least be in a team of 5. And they must be accompanied by a spiritual caster. The main thing was that they could resist. 5 people ganging up on a law-breaking beast. Even so, accidents sometimes happened. What are you waiting for? Come and take care of it. Zichun looked at Butterball and said, "Do you want me to do it?" Butterball trotted over. Then, he took out a long knife and began to cut the law-breaking beast. Even if it was dead, the law-breaking beast still had a body. It had amazing defense. Butterball could only use his power and began to carefully break it down. Let's break a leg first and have a taste. After being here for so long, Zichun had not eaten anything other than refining energy. Although he didn't need to eat it all, he still felt a little hungry. Kant nodded repeatedly. In this Shatter FA city, everything else was fine except for food, which was ridiculously expensive. Even he, a spellbreaker, had only eaten it once. It was only after Spicer had advanced to the Six Forces state that he invited them to eat there. After that, Butterball never went there again. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he felt that it wasn't worth it. Even the spellbreaker felt that it was not worth it. Why don't we walk outside? Butterball looked around. He was a little worried. After all, there were only 2 of them. He still couldn't fight. Zichun could deal with 1 Six Forces realm spellbreaker, but what if there were 2? All right. The 2 walked to the border again. Along the way, Butterball had already picked up firewood. Although there was no seasoning, looking at the golden barbecue, the 2 still ate heartily. Butterball felt like he was about to bite his tongue off. It was too satisfying. Compared to the small plate in the restaurant, this was simply extravagant. At this moment, Butterball felt that following Zichun was not bad. After eating, the 2 continued to go deeper and hunted another law-breaking beast. Something that required a team to complete was done by Zichun alone. It had to be said that Zichun was powerful and terrifying. After that, they didn't find anything else. Looking at the sky, Butterball suggested that they go back first. It was said that it was not safe to stay here at night. Even those teams with many people didn't dare to stay here for the night. Since they had found something today, the 2 began to return. When the sky was completely dark, the 2 returned to the city. One of them would be exchanged for resources by Butterball tomorrow. As for the other one, Butterball dissected it into several pieces. The 2 of them divided the loot on the spot. After returning, Zichun went to look for Marcus. Marcus was very surprised by Zichun's appearance and was also a little excited. "I heard that you went out hunting today. How was it? Was a Six Forces realm law-breaking beast very difficult to deal with?" Marcus said with a smile. Zichun was very grateful to Marcus. He treated him well. Zichun nodded and said, "Not bad. It was an eye-opener." Hearing Zichun's words, Marcus thought that Zichun had not found anything. He immediately comforted him. "Don't worry. Wait until you get familiar with it. Then you will definitely find something." Zichun smiled and then took out a portion of meat. He said, "I don't have anything good for you. Just consider it to satisfy your craving." Marcus looked at the beast meat that filled the entire table in disbelief. This was extremely precious, both the meat and the bones. By the time he reacted, Zichun had already left. Marcus was very excited. It was not because of the beast meat that he had never seen before, but because even though Zichun had become a shadow destroyer, he still recognized him. It was just that he was more or less restrained in front of Zichun. On the same day, after Butterball returned, he immediately woke up his companions. After killing the first law-breaking beast, other than eating one of its legs, the remaining parts were divided between the 2 of them. It was almost half for each of them. So when Butterball took out the other half, Phoebe and the others were stunned. Butterball smiled and said, "How was it? Not bad, right?" They looked at Butterball with envy in their eyes. This half of the beast's body was very valuable. They did not expect Zichun to be so generous to him. Phoebe looked at the beast's body and said, "It's not bad, but I advise you to stay away from Zichun in the future." "What's the matter?" Butterball asked in surprise. Phoebe did not answer. Instead, he asked, "You know his situation, right?" Butterball nodded and said, "I know. He can't break through anymore. But Zichun, who's in the 5-strength realm, is comparable to a team in the 6-strength realm. Even if he can't break through, no one will dare to target him, right?" "You brat." Phoebe reached out and hit Butterball hard on the head. "How long has it been? And you're already speaking up for him. Why, do you really think you can do whatever you want just because you have a shadow destroyer? No way." Butterball immediately shrunk his neck. "I'm telling the truth. Today, Spicer met Zichun and invited him to join them. In the end, Zichun said that he did not trust them. He said that if he got angry, he would kill them all. So Spicer left." "I'm not talking about that," Phoebe said. "You know that Zichun is very strong, and the others are not stupid. But why didn't they try to recruit him? They think that Zichun can't break through, and that he's not valuable." "Valuable, my ass." Phoebe was so angry that he laughed. "In this place, it's all about using what you have. Who cares about value? I heard that there are people above who want to harm Zichun." "Harm Zichun? How is that possible?" Butterball could not believe it. Chapter 5096. Butterball, who had wanted to show off, became solemn after hearing Phoebe's words. "This is a secret, so you better be careful. Don't get implicated." Phoebe warned again, and the others followed suit. Butterball left the half of the beast carcass and turned to leave. He didn't seem to be in a good mood. After Butterball left, one of them said, "Phoebe, there's no need to scare him like that, right? If Kant gains something, it's a good thing for us, isn't it? At least for now, Zichun trusts him and is willing to keep him by his side." Phoebe glanced at that person. "You think I'm stupid? I'm just warning him in advance to prevent him from getting into trouble. That Zichun is indeed a troublemaker. As for scaring him, if you believe it, you'll get it." The others looked at each other. Shadow destroyers were very mysterious, and they didn't know much about them. Phoebe waved his hand. "All right, let's roast it and eat it. Although Zichun isn't a good person, this is good stuff." The next day, Butterball and Kant went to the Spellbreaker Hall to dispose of the 6-strength state Lawbreaker beast's carcass. However, Butterball hesitated. He didn't know what to exchange for. After thinking about it, he exchanged for 2 sets of martial crystal sources. These things weren't available on the 1st level. They could only be exchanged on the 2nd level. To enter the 2nd level, one had to be in the same realm or use the carcass of a beast to open the way. Of course, this was because he was a lawbreaker. If it were the spiritual spell hall, one couldn't enter the 2nd level without being in the same realm. A 6-strength state lawbreaker beast's carcass could only be exchanged for 2 sets. He took the Spellbreaker sources and went to find Zichun. Zichun was a little surprised, but he accepted it. Breaking through the realm was indeed the most important thing now. Then he looked at Butterball and hesitated. He smiled faintly and said, "Take it." He directly gave the other party a martial crystal origin. With it, Butterball might be able to take another step forward and reach the 6 forces boundary. Butterball knew that Zichun had misunderstood, so he didn't take the martial crystal origin. He said directly, "When I went back yesterday, I thought about it for a long time. Your situation is indeed very special, but it doesn't mean that you don't have a chance to break through." Zichun laughed. "Why? Are you comforting me?" Kant shook his head and said, "No, it's just that your situation is very rare. It's a little strange." Then he looked at Zichun. He didn't know what to say next. For example, "It's so strange that it makes one curious." The smile on Zichun's face disappeared. He was not a fool, nor was he a youngster who looked young. He had lived for a long time and had seen countless schemes and schemes. He had even seen saints and villains. He instantly understood what the other party meant. "Are you going out with me again today?" "Good. Let's hunt some more law-breaking beasts." Kant immediately nodded. The two went out of the city again. After walking for a long time, Kant suddenly said, "Why don't we try to go deeper today and not come back tonight?" Zichun looked around. There was no one around. Okay. He had some questions to ask Butterball, but he felt that there was no need to ask. The word curious gave Zichen a lot of thoughts. Perhaps he needed to break through as soon as possible. Before he broke through, staying outside might be the best result. But there was also a problem. If he stayed outside, there would be no resources to exchange. How could he break through? The two entered the mountain and killed the first law-breaking beast. It was finished in one move because it was a 5 forces boundary beast. Then, they continued to go deeper. Butterball stood behind Zichen and kept a distance of 3 feet from Zichen. This distance was enough for him to retreat quickly if he encountered any danger. Boom! A powerful energy shock wave. The first law-breaking beast of 6 forces boundary fell at Zichen's feet. Butterball and Kant immediately went forward and collected the law-breaking beast's corpse. They brought it to a place not far away and prepared to dissect it. If they dissected it themselves, they would get more materials. If they sent the whole thing over, they would get less materials. Come, let's go deeper, Zichen said without looking back. Kant could only follow immediately. On this day, Zichen killed 3 law-breaking beasts of 6 forces boundary. At night, the two retreated to the edge of the mountain range. They started a fire and barbecued meat. Fatty would occasionally look around, his expression full of vigilance. After all, he was only at the 5 forces boundary. The law-breaking beasts that appeared here were at least at this level. Zichen threw the barbecued meat to him. Then, he took a portion and ate. Facing the food, Butterball was a little absent-minded. Zichen added some firewood to the bonfire. Tell me what you know about the shadow destroyers. Kant shook his head. I've never seen a shadow destroyer. You're the first. We only know about them in various rumors. Butterball thought for a moment. It's said that the shadow destroyer's status is extremely noble. It even surpasses that of lawbreakers. They rarely appear in the periphery because their status is too noble. That's why they live in the core of Dharma Breaking City with the big shots. A shadow destroyer has the sole power of a lawbreaker. They also have the energy of a lawcaster. With the combination of the two powers, their combat power is extraordinary. They can be said to be invincible. Butterball told him what he knew. Just like the rumors, he knew nothing else. Zichen asked again, all these years, there hasn't been a shadow destroyer? No. Butterball shook his head again. After that, Zichen did not ask any more questions. The night was silent. There was no danger. When the sky brightened, the two continued to go deeper and hunt law-breaking beasts. Today, they were a little unlucky. They only killed 2. After that, the two left early. Before the sky darkened, Zichen began to refine the martial crystal source. The energy in the martial crystal source was absorbed by his heart like a clay ox entering the sea. During this time, there was no feedback of new energy. Zichen was now only 1 step away from the 6 realms of strength. And this step was not lacking in energy, but in rules. Or it could be said to be an instant of enlightenment and the recognition of rules. He originally thought that the energy in the martial crystal source could help him. Now, it seemed that it was a little difficult. When the sky brightened, Kant left. He brought the corpses of the 5 law-breaking beasts back to exchange for the martial crystal source. Because Zichen said that if 1 strand of energy was not enough, then he could get a few more. Since he had the means to kill law-breaking beasts, he could use numbers to make up for it. This energy also entered the heart, but did not flow out during this period. In Zichen's spiritual sea, there was still a lot of soul power. However, he could only control a portion of it, which was pitifully little. It was like there was a mountain of gold in front of him, and Zichen could only lift a stone on it. But even so, Zichen already had the means to kill a 6 realms. It was hard to imagine what kind of combat power he would have once he completely controlled the soul power. The sky gradually darkened. Kant, who went back early in the morning, had not returned yet. Chapter 5097. It was enough time for a round trip, but Butterball did not come back. Zichen looked at the sky and started a fire. He obviously did not think that Butterball had run away with those things, even though those things were indeed very precious. Did something happen? But what happened? Did he encounter a 6 forces state lawbreaker beast? Or someone else? The former was unlikely, because 6 forces state lawbreaker beasts were rarely encountered in the periphery. and it would be difficult for a five-forces state lawbreaker to kill Kant. As for the others, it was even more impossible. After all, a lawbreaker was noble. Who would dare to attack him? Zichen guessed that something had happened in the city. In Kant's residence, Butterball held his head in his hands and squatted in a corner, his body trembling. His breath was very weak, as if he had been seriously injured. Phoebe and the others stood on the other side, looking at Butterball worriedly. A man in a black robe leaned back on a chair and said, "Have you thought it through?" Butterball raised his head and said timidly, "Sir, I really don't know where he is. I snuck out." The man in the black robe stood up and clenched his fists, his knuckles cracking. "So, you want to try again? Don't hit him. He'll die if you continue." Phoebe hurriedly said, "Kant, quickly tell him where Zichen is." "I'm not lying. I stole Zichen's things and snuck out." Butterball said again, "I don't know where he is." "It seems that you won't give up until you see the coffin." A cold, murderous intent flashed in the eyes of the man in the black robe. He walked towards Kant step by step. Kant was so scared that his body was trembling, but he still did not tell Zichen where he was. Bang! Kant's body left the corner and rolled away. "You reckless dog! How dare you lie to me?" The black-robed man stepped forward and kicked Kant's head again. Kant let out a cry of pain as his body was sent flying again. "I've heard about your matter. A dignified spellbreaker actually became a dog for a spirit caster." The black-robed man repeatedly stomped his feet, landing either on the head or the chest. Facing this existence, Butterball could only try his best to hold his head. One kick after another. Hearing that booming sound, Phoebe and the others were frightened, but they didn't dare to resist. At this moment, they were also filled with anger. Phoebe couldn't help but shout, "Kongda, hurry up and tell us." "Yeah, just tell me where Zichen is and everything will be fine." His other companions also spoke out. Obviously, they felt that it was not worth it to lose their lives for Zichen. Butterball's aura grew weaker and weaker. The black-robed man was still kicking and scolding. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from the door. "He's a spellbreaker. Don't kill him." "Andrew, it's already dark. Let's talk about it tomorrow." It was Spicer's voice. As a six-forces realm spellbreaker, his words carried some weight. "All right, I'm tired from today. Let's talk about it tomorrow." "I hope you're still so tough tomorrow." The black-robed man glanced at Kant with disdain, then turned and left. After he left, Phoebe and the others immediately surrounded him. Looking at the weak Kant, Phoebe said angrily, "Why are you protecting him? Do you really want to die?" Butterball was silent. Sanglari took out a beam of energy and placed it in front of Kant. "I've known Zichen for a very long time, and he's a troublemaker. Listen to Phoebe, stay away from him, or he'll kill you sooner or later." Kant took the energy and began to refine it, not saying a word during the process. "Think about it carefully tonight. Is it worth it?" Phoebe patted Kant's shoulder, saying, "I've secretly asked Spicer. That guy came from the depths and is truly ruthless. If you go against him again, he'll definitely kill you. Being a spellbreaker won't save you. Think about it. For a Zichen, is it worth it?" But no matter how they tried to persuade him, Kant didn't say a word. He was naturally afraid of death, but he also felt that it wasn't good to expose Zichen like this. Zichen said before, among the group, he was the most likely to survive if something happened. Although he wasn't good with words, he wasn't stupid. He began to refine the pure soul power, trying to recover as soon as possible. After his injuries were completely healed, the sky was still dark. Butterball quietly left the room and hurried in the night. It wasn't as dark as during the day. Fortunately, Kant was also a 5-strengths state cultivator, so it wasn't difficult for him to move. He prayed silently in his heart that he wouldn't encounter a 6-strengths state law-breaker beast, or else he would definitely die. Even if it was a 5-strengths state cultivator, it would be difficult for him to fight in the dark. It took more than twice as long as usual. Butterball finally saw the bonfire in the dark night. He quickly walked forward. Zichen, who was sitting cross-legged, heard the movement and opened his eyes. In the dark night, his eyes were shining. "It's Kant." Zichen's expression changed slightly. The other party shouldn't have come at this time. According to his estimation, the other party might have been delayed by something, and even if he came, it would be tomorrow. Butterball quickly approached. After seeing Zichun, he took the martial crystal source and said in a low voice, "Hurry up and leave. Someone wants to harm you." Zichun took the martial crystal source, but didn't leave. He looked into the distance. "Hurry up. What are you waiting for?" Kant glanced at Zichun. "Kant, you did well." At that instant, a voice could be heard coming from behind. After hearing the voice, Kant's expression changed tremendously. It was the person who had tortured him for the entire day. As expected, this is the only way he won't be suspicious of you. The voice continued, "You've succeeded, right? Is he dead?" Kant's face instantly turned pale. He glanced at Zichun and tried to explain. Zichun raised his hand and interrupted him. "Go wait at the side." There was no need for him to explain. Regardless of the person's intention, there was no way Zichun would kill Butterball. If he really wanted to kill him, he would have done so a long time ago. The sky was slightly brighter. The person leading the group was a man in a black robe, followed by 4 people. One of them was Spike. He was not familiar with Zichun, thus he wouldn't care if Zichun was dead or alive. Thus he had come up with a little plan. They did not leave, but hid in the dark. As expected, Kant was tricked, thus they followed him here. The plan was to protect Kant. Unexpectedly, after arriving at this place, Andrew actually used a few heart-wrenching words to kill Kongda with a borrowed knife. Luckily, Zichun did not interfere. "It's not easy to find you." The man glanced at Zichun. "Now, come back with us." Zichun stared at him without saying a word. The man continued, "Don't worry, we won't harm you. However, the higher-ups need your cooperation to tell you something." Zichun shook his head and said, "I don't trust you." "It doesn't matter if you trust me or not, just come with me." Chapter 5098. Andrew looked at Zichun indifferently as a cold smile appeared on his face. "Do you want to live or die?" Zichun did not care about the threat of a 6-forces state cultivator. This was because he had already killed many of these people. He looked at Butterball. Kant wanted to explain, but Zichun threw something at him. It was the martial crystal source. There were 2 of them. "You." Kant looked at Zichun in surprise. Zichun waved his hand and signaled Kant to stay away. Andrew looked at Zichun's action and said disdainfully, "Why? Do you want to challenge me?" Then, he laughed out loud. His laughter was full of disdain. However, the 4 people behind him did not laugh. Unlike Andrew, who came from the depths of Pofa City, the 4 of them were 6-forces state cultivators. Spicer, especially, knew Zichun very well. Right now, if Andrew could not stop Zichun, then what awaited them would definitely be death. If Zichun wanted to kill, the 4 of them would not be able to stop him. Interesting. Andrew noticed the abnormality of the 4 people behind him. He smiled faintly and said, "Since you're here, I might as well show you what I'm made of. I'll let you frogs at the bottom of a well see what true strength is." He made a provocative gesture at Zichun. Spicer and the others did not think highly of him because of his arrogance. They quietly stepped back and put some distance between them. That way, when Zichun killed Andrew, they would be able to escape in time. Buzz. Zichun did not hold back in the face of provocation. The massacre spirit flew out like a bolt of lightning and went straight for his opponent. Under the influence of his soul power, the massacre spirit was not only faster, but also more powerful. Even though he was only a 5-forces state cultivator, he could still kill a 6-forces state cultivator. "Be careful." Seeing this, Spicer reminded him. Andrew's expression did not change much. He only extended his palm and then retracted 3 fingers. He only used 2 fingers to fight. Pa. In the next moment, something strange happened. The slaughtering spirit was caught between Andrew's 2 fingers, unable to move an inch further. This scene seemed to have frozen time and space, causing everyone's expressions to freeze. This included Zichun. His spirit of slaughter was caught between 2 fingers of the other party? How is this possible? Kant, who had already retreated, was also shocked as he looked ahead in shock. How powerful was Zichun's move? How could it be blocked so easily? Spicer and the rest, who had quietly retreated earlier, also looked in front of them in disbelief. Just this? Andrew sneered. The light in his hand flickered and the massacre spirit shot off into the distance. It sank into a large tree. Buzz. In the next moment, the massacre spirit trembled again and flew back to Zichen's side. Zichen's eyes were cold as he used all of his strength. Clearly, he did not believe that he would lose. Soul power swirled around, and the slaughter spirit's speed became even faster, its killing intent boundless. Pa. But in the next moment, it was once again caught between Andrew's two fingers. Die. Zichen's figure flashed and appeared in front of Andrew. He raised the bone rod in his hand and used his energy to quickly smash it towards Andrew's head. A frog at the bottom of a well. Andrew's expression was still disdainful. He reached out with his other hand and grabbed the bone rod firmly. No matter how hard Zichen tried, the bone rod could not break free from his opponent's hand. The energy contained in the rod was also suppressed by a strange force. Now you know what you're worth, right? Andrew lifted his leg and kicked out. Zichen's body flew backwards. He did not have the strength to fight back at all. Everyone was stunned. How could this be? Zichen flew several feet away, and the two weapons were in Andrew's hands. Many people wanted to get their hands on these two weapons. The reason why Zichen was killed was also related to these two items. But after so many people's schemes, they did not manage to get these two weapons. Who would have thought that they would be caught by Andrew so easily today? Spicer's eyes flashed. Could this be the method of the people in the depths? Zichen staggered to his feet. His eyes were also filled with shock. The gap between the two of them was too big. It was almost unbelievable. Either you follow me or you die. Andrew looked at Zichen and said indifferently. Zichen's figure flashed and rushed forward again. His opponent was only in the six forces state. It was impossible for him to be so powerful. There must be something wrong. He threw out a punch and went straight for Andrew. Golden light flashed, and there were crisscrossing lights. This was the attack that Zichen had learned. Swoosh. Andrew's hand shook, and the spirit of massacre went straight for Zichen. But when it got close to Zichen, it went around him. Then, the spirit of massacre circled around Zichen and continued to move forward to kill Andrew. At the same time, Andrew held the bone rod in his hand and smashed it towards Zichen. Bam! The powerful vibration destroyed Zichen's attack and caused his body to slide backward. The bone rod in Andrew's hand did not unleash its full power. Zichen was only pushed back and was not hurt. In front of him, the spirit of massacre's third attack was blocked. Again. Zichen rushed forward again. He seemed to have found the problem. During this time, the spirit of massacre kept trembling and the light of power flickered on its surface. Andrew held the spirit of massacre between his fingers so that it could not break free. Every time the spirit of massacre surged, it would disappear automatically. Then, the bone rod in Andrew's other hand smashed down again. This time, Zichen did not choose to fight head-on. Instead, he reached out and grabbed the bone rod. Then, he kept urging the energy to gather towards the bone rod, trying to activate the true power of the bone rod. After all, the bone rod was his weapon. It was stronger in his hands. The bone rod tried to activate the power again and again, but the power disappeared like a clay ox entering the sea. Both sides were in a deadlock. It seemed that no one could do anything to the other. The others were confused. They did not know why it was like this, but in the next moment, Zichen moved. He clenched his other hand into a fist and punched towards Andrew's face. During this time, his body twisted and avoided the other party's kick. Bam! The punch hit the other party's cheek. The powerful force sent Andrew flying. The bone rod and the spirit of massacre returned to Zichen's hand. Everyone's expression changed again. How did it turn around? Zichen looked at Andrew indifferently. The shock in his eyes had disappeared. Andrew stood up. He was not injured. Zichen's attack was nothing to him. You saw through it? Andrew suddenly asked. Zichen said, You can devour my energy. Yes, the reason why the other party was strong was not because of his combat power, but because he directly absorbed Zichen's attack power. For example, when the spirit of massacre came into contact with the other party's palm, the soul power attack on it was absorbed. The remaining power of the spirit of massacre was naturally unable to resist Andrew. The bone rod's attack was the same. The energy was absorbed by the other party's palm. When it landed, only the bone rod's power was left. Without the support of Zichen's energy attack, both the spirit of massacre and the bone rod's power was limited. But Zichen also noticed that when the other party absorbed his energy attack, he could no longer fight back. This was why his punch could hit the other party. Even if I stand here without moving, you can't hurt me at all. Come back with me, Andrew said coldly. Otherwise, I will hold you back and the others can chop off your head at any time. At this moment, the advantage of having more people was revealed. He only needed one person, not to mention that he had brought 4 6-power state cultivators. Zichen did not reply. He turned and left. Chapter 5099. Zichen turned around and entered the mountain range, which stunned the others. After all, on the surface, he did not lose, and his combat power was not weaker than Andrew's. But he retreated decisively. Andrew's lips curled into a cold smile. Let's go. The sky was already bright, and he followed behind Zichen. Spicer and the other 3 could only follow after seeing this. Before leaving, Spicer glanced at Kant, using his cold eyes to warn him not to follow. Zichen might go straight into the depths, and that was not a place where Kant, who was in the 5 forces state, could stay. Kant stared at Zichen's back until he disappeared. Then he let out a sigh. He turned around and left. Today's incident was strange in every way. How could the powerful Zichen not be able to defeat a 6 forces state? Could it be that there was a secret in the depths that they, the Spellbreakers, did not know? Unfortunately, no matter what the secret was, it was not something that Kant could explore. He, who was in the 5 forces state, could not even protect himself. Taking one last look into the distance, Kant said in his heart, "Stay alive," and went back. Zichen went deeper into the depths, and the few people behind him chased after him. It's useless. The world is big. You can't escape from me. Andrew's voice came from behind them. Zichen tapped his foot, stepping on big rocks one after another. His movements were very agile, like a monkey going deep into the depths. Andrew's lips were curled into a disdainful smile. Spicer quietly looked at Andrew. While he was shocked, he was also filled with suspicion. How could he ignore Zichen's attack? He thought for a while. Then he mustered up his courage and asked, "Sir, was your previous technique comprehended from the rules?" The other 3 were also curious. After all, as spellbreakers, they knew almost everything in Pofa City. But they had never heard of such a technique. Rules? No, it's just an ability. Andrew glanced at Spicer and the other 3. If you have the chance to enter the depths, you will have the same ability if you are lucky. Spicer and the others were surprised and happy. If they really had such a technique, they would be crushed if they encountered Zichen. Swoosh! There was a spell-breaker beast in front, and it charged towards Zichen quickly. Zichen tapped his foot, and his figure quickly dodged. When he avoided the attack of the spell-breaker beast, he pushed his palm. The spell-breaker beast went straight behind. It rolled and landed on the ground, stirring up countless sand and stones. When it got up, it happened to see Andrew and the other 4. Without the slightest hesitation, he charged forward. Andrew sneered and punched forward. Bang! Andrew's body slid backward, while the 6 forces state lawbreaker beast rolled and fell to the ground. It was still not injured, and once again attacked the group. When Spicer and the others saw this, they shouted and attacked. The unique soul power attack of a spellbreaker fell on the spellbreaker beast. Under the joint attack of the 4, the spellbreaker beast was quickly injured and ran away. Zichen happened to be standing on a high ground at this moment, and he turned back to see this scene. This made him even more puzzled. It seemed that the other party only had the means to resist his power. Otherwise, why didn't he block the spellbreaker beast directly? The doubts in his heart flashed, and he continued to go deeper. However, this test also let him know Andrew's weakness. Next, it wouldn't be very difficult to get rid of Andrew. The spellbreaker beast ran away, and Andrew walked over from behind. Continue to follow it. "Sir, can't you ignore the spellbreaker beast's attack?" Spicer asked curiously. "What's the point of that?" Andrew smiled proudly. "If you want to ignore it, you have to ignore the strongest shadow destroyer." Spicer and the others nodded. It seemed to be the case. Both sides had only fought a few times, and Zichun was scared away. If it were not for Andrew today, they would probably have been killed by Zichun. Sir, Zichun is a shadow destroyer. What's the matter with him? In the forest, seeing that Andrew was in a good mood, Spicer asked the question in his heart. He's just a guy who luckily awakened soul power. Just lucky, Andrew said disdainfully, and he'll stop at the 5 strengths realm for the rest of his life. He really can't break through? Spicer said. I have some understanding of him. He hasn't been here for long, but his speed of breaking through is really not slow. His combat strength is also outstanding among those of the same level. No matter how fast he broke through, once he becomes a shadow destroyer, it's impossible for him to break through again, Andrew said confidently. It's not that I look down on him, but no matter how many martial crystal sources he refines, even if he finds a rare spell breaker beast core, he can forget about breaking through. Andrew pointed to the sky, because the rules don't allow it. In this world, the rules are greater than everything. Looking at the few people who were still confused, Andrew said, you don't know the reason because it involves some secrets that are only circulated internally. But sir, he's clearly an outsider. How did he become a shadow destroyer? There are always some fish that slip through the net. Perhaps they encountered some opportunity. This is not surprising. However, after his identity changed, he was destined to walk a dead end. The 5 of them followed behind. When they encountered spellbreaker beasts, Andrew did not make a move. The 4 of them dealt with them. They finally understood why such a powerful sir would bring the 4 of them along. It turned out that he had long expected Zichun to run to this mountain range. Arriving at a high ground, Andrew looked at the figure jumping in the forest and shouted, Stop running. Come back with me, and you can still live. If you continue running like this, you'll eventually encounter a powerful spellbreaker beast. At that time, only death will await you. Zichun turned back and crooked his finger at Andrew, making a provocative gesture. Andrew's expression was a little ugly. He looked into the depths of the forest. Running like this was not the way to go. It did not matter if that guy died, but if he caused them to lose their lives as well, the gains would not make up for the losses. Let's go back. Andrew did not intend to give chase. After all, this mission had been completed. He had obtained what he needed. In the distance, Zichun realized that Andrew had stopped chasing and did not go deeper. However, he did not immediately go to the periphery. Instead, he continued to stay here, just in case. Andrew retraced his steps and came to the place where he had fought Zichun. He said, Keep an eye out. If he runs out, report immediately. Remember, don't kill him. After all, if he dies now, his corpse will disappear. We have great use for him. A 6 Forces realm cultivator who had been arranged to stay behind hurriedly nodded. He had previously been worried that Zichun would find him and kill him with a stick when he came out. Now, there was no need to be afraid. As long as he saw him from afar, he would turn and run. Zichun, who was still in the forest, was ambushed by a spell-breaker beast. This time, he did not hold back. With the bone staff and the massacre spirit, he easily finished the battle. Just as the spell-breaker beast was about to die, a ball of light suddenly flew out from its body. This ball of light was unusually bright. This was a ball of light. Chapter 5100. The ball of light floated in front of him, causing his eyes to light up. Zichun was shocked at first, then he quickly scanned his surroundings. After confirming that there was nothing unusual, he reached out and grabbed the inner core. He felt a rich and violent power, and the inner core in his hand was trembling slightly. So it was this. Zichun suddenly understood. He had once heard Kongda mention that if one was lucky enough, they would be able to obtain the inner core of the law-breaking beast after killing it. However, the probability was too low. The inner core was extremely valuable, far more valuable than the source of martial crystals. It was said that after refining it, a 5-strength realm cultivator had a 90% chance of breaking through. Now, Zichun was only 1 step away from the 6-strength realm. This inner core might be able to help him break through. He looked at the sky and decided to find a place first. There were mountains and rocks everywhere, and there was no place to hide. Zichun began to go deeper. He was not so arrogant that he dared to stay in the open at night. After an hour, Zichen found a cave. After confirming that there had been no signs of habitation for a long time, he walked in and blocked the entrance. Then, he began to refine the inner core. At night, the forest was filled with beast roars, and more law-breaking beasts began to appear. Zichen stayed in the cave, and the energy of the inner core continuously entered his body and was then absorbed by his heart. During this time, there was no feedback. Zichen was not in a hurry. He slowly refined the inner core and waited. After the sky darkened, the sixth-strength realm lawbreaker who was guarding outside felt a trace of fear in his heart. Not only was he afraid of law-breaking beasts running out, but he was also worried that Zichen would suddenly appear and kill him. So, he extinguished the bonfire. However, he still felt unsafe, so he retreated into the distance, away from the forest in front of him. After another 2 hours, listening to the roars of the beasts, the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. Then, he gritted his teeth and went back. Compared to the mission, his life was obviously more important. The night was silent. In the cave, the inner core in Zichen's hand had consumed about 1/3 of its energy. However, his heart was still absorbing without feedback. Could it be that he had to wait until it was completely refined? Zichen had such a guess in his heart. The Six Forces State Cultivator came again during the day and stood outside the forest again. When the sky turned dark, he decisively went back. After repeating this process for 3 days, he still hadn't seen Zichen. He concluded that Zichen was dead. Thus, he returned with peace of mind. As for Andrew, he had left 2 days ago. Buzz. Zichen's Niden finally ran out of energy after 3 days. All the energy was absorbed by the heart, but there was no feedback. Zichen stood up and stretched his back, warming up his muscles and bones. Looking through the crack in the rock, the sky outside was very bright. First, he went out for a walk and found a place to roast a piece of meat to eat. Then, he returned to refine the martial crystal source. Even after refining all the martial crystal sources, he still failed to have a breakthrough. Zichen had no choice but to continue trying. A few days later, he obtained another Niden, but there was still no effect after refining it. Ordinary people only needed 1 Niden, but he had already refined 2 Nadens and many martial crystal sources. Finally, after refining the 3rd inner core, Zichen began to have doubts about his own abilities. Could it be that he really couldn't pass this final step? He tried to comprehend the rules, but he found that it was useless. The rules of heaven and earth seemed to be isolating him from the outside world, causing him to be unable to sense them at all. Walking out of the cave, Zichen walked aimlessly in the forest. After so long, no one caught up to him. Obviously, they wouldn't come again. As long as he didn't go out, Zichen would live a good life here. The prerequisite was that he didn't die here. In Pofa City, Zichen's sudden rise to fame caused people to talk about him for a long time. However, he soon disappeared, and there was no news about him. Gradually, everyone lost interest in talking about him and stopped paying attention to him. In the end, he seemed to have been forgotten. Only Butterball and Kant would often think of him. He was a flash in the pan, but he was very dazzling. Unfortunately, he disappeared in the end. Phoebe and the others would also talk about him. Every time, they would laugh heartily and say that he deserved to die. Marcus would also often think of Zichen, but he never dared to mention him to others. It was as if this name had become some kind of taboo. After Andrew went back, he came back again. He came to ask if Zichen had been caught. After learning that Zichen had not come out, Andrew asked people to keep an eye on Zichen. After that, he went back again. It seemed that even he didn't think highly of Zichen and thought that he had died long ago. Zichen stayed in the depths for a long time, aimlessly every day. At first, he would find a cave to hide in when the sky turned dark, but later, he gradually got used to it. As long as there was a big tree, he dared to rest on it. Moreover, he had walked all the way until now, and he didn't know where he was. On this day, Zichen had just killed a law-breaking beast when an inner core appeared in front of him. He calmly put away the inner core. He had been in the depths for a long time and had refined as many as 5 inner cores, but they were still useless for cultivation. Therefore, Zichun put away the rest of the inner cores. As for the corpses of the law-breaking beasts, Zichun also put them away. Suddenly, Zichun's expression changed slightly. He saw a figure in front of him. At this moment, it was broad daylight, and that figure actually appeared. A vanishing shadow beast. He had never seen a vanishing shadow beast in the depths. Since the figure had appeared, then where was the real body of the vanishing shadow beast? Should Zichun try to find it? Zichun didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that the vanishing shadow beast seemed to be smiling at him. He frowned slightly. His figure flashed, and he stood on a high ground. He looked around. There were no other exotic beasts nearby. The figure still stood there silently. It was said that when the vanishing shadow beast attacked, its real body would hide in the dark, and the figure in front of him was an illusion. He still didn't find it. Squeak, 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 squeak. The figure in front of him seemed to be speaking, but he didn't know what it was saying. However, Zichun could sense that the other party didn't have any ill intentions. Then, he turned and left. After walking for a while, he turned back to look at Zichun. Zichun looked at him and didn't move. The other party looked at Zichun and didn't move either. Zichun hesitated and walked forward. The other party turned and continued forward. After walking for a few feet, he turned back to look at Zichun and found that Zichun had stopped. He also stopped. Zichun continued forward. The other party also continued forward. Every few feet, the other party would stop and look at Zichun. When he found that Zichun was following behind, he didn't stop. The other party was deliberately leading the way for him. Zichun's brows furrowed slightly. Was he planning to lure him to a certain place and then kill him? But he still followed behind. After walking like this for a few hours, the sky was about to turn dark. Once it turned dark, it would be the vanishing shadow beast's world. Zichun frowned again, hesitating whether to continue following. The vanishing shadow beast found that Zichun wasn't walking anymore. It started to babble, but unfortunately, no one could understand it. Then, he waved at Zichun. Zichun understood what he was doing and asked him to follow him. Was he going to die? Chapter 5101. The vanishing shadow beast babbled and said something that Zichun could not understand. Then it waved at him. Zichun understood, but he hesitated. The sky was about to darken. That was the time when the vanishing shadow beast would appear. Although he did not sense the other party's malice, it did not mean that it did not have any. But after some hesitation, Zichun still decided to go and take a look. After all, the vanishing shadow beasts he met before only knew how to devour souls. This one was different. If there was danger, it would not be too late to run. Even in the dark, he had a special eye technique and could see clearly. Seeing that Zichun had caught up, the vanishing shadow beast continued to move forward. But just like before, it turned back and looked at Zichun. After another 7 or 8 turns, the vanishing shadow beast suddenly disappeared. This made Zichun's expression change slightly. Just then, the other party appeared again, but only its head was exposed. It was smiling at him. It turned out to be a space barrier. Zichun had never seen a space barrier before. Now that he saw one for the first time, he was curious. Could it be that there are more vanishing shadow beasts living here? He followed in, but he was very careful. After meeting Andrew and realizing that the other party could restrain him, he was much more careful. After entering the ripples, Zichun seemed to have come to a paradise. There were green mountains and clear waters, and spiritual flowers and herbs were everywhere. The sky outside was already dark, but here it was bright. Everywhere he passed, there was a burst of floral fragrance. Zichun was very surprised. There was actually such a strange place in the depths of the mountains. If it had not led the way, he would not have found it. But why did the vanishing shadow beast bring him here? At this moment, the vanishing shadow beast was still walking in front, but it deliberately slowed down. Zichun looked around curiously until he saw a mountain. The mountain was black and extremely tall. It looked like the treasure left behind by Gushan. As he got closer, Zichun felt a strong soul power aura. It seemed to be triggering his soul power. Just as Zichun was puzzled, some figures appeared from the mountain. They were all vanishing shadow beasts. They had arrived at the nest of the vanishing shadow beast. When they saw Zichun, there was only curiosity in their eyes, but no malice. Squeak, squeak, squeak. No one knew what they were saying. The one that led Zichun in seemed to be explaining to everyone. Occasionally, it would look at Zichun and smile. Zichun couldn't see his smile, but he could sense it. Of course, he wasn't sure if his feeling was right. Zichun stood there and looked at the vanquishing shadow beasts. He did not feel threatened, so he did not act rashly. Soon, more people walked out of the Black Mountain. One of them was an elder. Compared to the illusory shadow vanishing beasts, he looked more like a human. However, after he began to walk, his body began to change. Like a shadow, he could disappear at any moment. Young man. The old man suddenly spoke. His clear soul power undulations caused Zichun to jump in fright. Who are you? Zichun looked at the old man. We are all vanishing shadow beasts. The old man's answer caused Zichun's expression to change again. He looked at those people carefully. They were almost exactly the same as the vanishing shadow beasts that devoured souls he saw in the outside world. Zichun asked, Aren't you vanishing shadow beasts? The difference of one word was like heaven and earth. For example, lawbreaker beasts and lawbreakers. The former was an animal, while the latter was a human, and they were people of high status. Vanishing shadow beasts? The old man smiled bitterly. That's right. That's our name now. Suppressing the curiosity in his heart, Zichun asked again, You guys led me here. Is there a reason? The old man waved his hand and said, Come and sit. He had been standing on the Black Mountain. Even the other vanishing shadow beasts were standing there. The one that led him here also walked up. Zichun walked forward. Although it was just a simple conversation, he could sense that these beings did not have any ill intentions towards him. Under the curious gaze of the vanishing shadow beasts, Zichun walked up the Black Mountain. His soul force surged within his sea of consciousness, causing even the black stone to tremble slightly. Then Zichun felt a special energy emerge from the Black Mountain. This energy entered his body. He did not reject this feeling. Instead, he felt very warm. What is this? Zichun asked curiously. This is the treasure of the vanishing shadow clan, the Soul Mountain. It's because of its existence that our remnant souls can survive. The old man looked at Zichun and sighed. But even with the help of the Soul Mountain, their minds are still incomplete. They can't speak and live like wandering ghosts. Fortunately, Xiaowei saw you. The heavens have not forsaken the vanishing shadow clan. Hearing the old man's sigh, Zichun hurriedly explained, Elder, you misunderstood. I'm not from the vanishing shadow clan. I'm from the spirit clan. I just accidentally obtained soul power and was mistaken for a vanishing shadow. The old man looked at Zichun and smiled. It doesn't matter if you're from the spirit clan or the vanishing shadow clan. Since you're here, it proves that we're fated. Seeing that the old man did not care about his identity, Zichun did not care either. The old man looked at Zichun and continued, Do you feel that your realm has stagnated after obtaining soul power? Zichun immediately nodded. During this time, he had refined many nadins and martial crystal sources, but his realm had not improved at all. Even the heart and the black stone in his mind could not help him. The old man explained, This is because the vanishing shadows laws are chaotic and no longer complete. Without complete laws, you can't break through. Zichun was surprised. The world's laws can become incomplete? They used to be complete, but they were destroyed by the spellbreakers, so the laws are no longer complete. Zichun did not understand, so the old man patiently explained. It turned out that a long time ago, this world was controlled by the vanishing shadow. They were the absolute rulers. Until one day, a spirit caster came here through the Milky Way. At that time, there was a problem with the world's laws. Then, heaven and earth shook and the laws changed. A portion of the spellbreaker beasts suddenly evolved and became spellbreakers. After those spellbreakers turned into human form, they obtained soul power. But compared to the vanishing shadow, the spellbreakers and spirit casters only had a single power, so the vanishing shadow's dominance was not shaken. But as time passed, the world's laws were no longer stable. Finally, one day, those spellbreakers suddenly killed the shadow vanishing shadow. With lightning speed, They killed all the shadow vanishing shadow. The souls of the dead shadow vanishing shadow did not dissipate. In the end, they became remnant souls and wandered the world. Hearing the old man's words, Zichun was completely stunned. Those spellbreakers were actually evolved from spellbreaker beasts, and those they called vanishing shadow beasts were actually the remnant souls of the dead shadow vanishing shadow. Chapter 5102. Hearing the truth, Zichen's face was filled with shock. The shadow vanquishers he saw were all humans? Without any preconceived notions, Zichen looked at these figures again and found that they were all normal people. Some of the short ones were just children. At this moment, everyone was looking at him with obvious curiosity. No wonder Zichen didn't sense any threat earlier. They didn't know how to attack at all. Hearing the old man's explanation, Zichen understood that the figure outside Shattering Law City was only a remnant soul. It had long lost its mind and followed its instincts. Some could live a little longer after absorbing soul power. Some couldn't absorb soul power and would disappear with the passage of time. As for these people, they didn't need to absorb soul power because of the existence of the Soul Mountain. They didn't need to worry about death, but it was extremely difficult for them to recover their intelligence and memories like the old man. Why did the Shadow Vanquisher lose? Zichen asked, puzzled. Aren't they the strongest? The Spellbreaker somehow cut off a part of the rules and used it to refine something. It has a suppressive effect on the Shadow Vanquisher. Hearing the old man's explanation, Zichen thought of Andrew. In the last battle, the other party had completely suppressed him. All his attacks were ineffective against Andrew, but a Spellbreaker beast in the forest could defeat him. Zichen didn't understand the reason before, but now Zichen understood. Then Zichen looked at these figures and found that they weren't so scary anymore. Instead, they were much friendlier. Because they were the same kind of people. Suddenly, Zichen remembered something. Last time, the Spellbreaker attacked me, but he didn't seem to want to kill me. They need your power, the old man said. Zichen didn't understand. The Spellbreaker is very ambitious. They've been studying the rules and power of the Shadow Vanquishers and then creating new Shadow Vanquishers, the old man said. The old man said, they call this kind of existence Shadow Breaker. This time, Zichen was shocked again. The Spellbreaker's methods were really endless. Not only did he mess up the rules of the world and destroy the Shadow Vanquisher race, but now he wanted to create a new race. He could imagine that even if Andrew didn't kill him, as long as he captured him, what followed would be endless research. In fact, it even went from stripping away one's strength to stripping away one's soul and body. Just thinking about it made him feel good. Zichen's body fell back, and he looked up at the blue sky. It seems that we will be living together from now on. Since the rules were not complete, there was no possibility of a breakthrough, which was why Zichen had not broken through yet. Whether it was the heart or the black stone, they could only provide him with energy, but they could not help him repair the loss. Therefore, he could only accept his fate. At this moment, Zichen suddenly missed his hometown and his friends. He wondered if they were doing well. Hugh didn't go back on his word, did he? As for him, he was completely unable to return. The world had changed, and the rules had been broken. It was obviously impossible for him to repair it with his current strength of the 5-strength state. Unknowingly, Zichen had fallen asleep. The old man looked at the sleeping Zichen and waved his hand, indicating that everyone could disperse. The other shadow destroyers scattered in all directions. Some entered the Black Mountain Peak, but some stayed behind. Many of them sat or sprawled in front of Zichen, looking at him curiously. Zichen slept very soundly. He even had a dream and saw his friends. When he opened his eyes and saw the big and small heads, he was shocked. Then he sat up. His thoughts returned. Zichen knew what had happened and sighed softly. Babbling sounds could be heard. These shadow destroyers, who were obviously children, were saying something to him. Zichen could not understand and could only smile at them. There was still a warm energy entering his body from the Black Mountain Peak, but it did not change anything. Soon, Zichen discovered a problem. Because everyone's bodies were illusory, they did not need to refine energy. They just needed to stay on the Black Mountain Peak. However, Zichen could not. His energy would be depleted, even if he stayed in this place. Although he still had a lot of energy, it would be used up one day. It seemed that he could not stay here for long. So, after staying here for a while, Zichun decided to leave. If those spell breakers found their way here, it would be a complete disaster for all the shadow destroyers present. He looked at the Black Mountain Peak. If even this thing was destroyed, then the Shadow Destroyer clan would disappear completely. When that happened, he would be a sinner. So, he told the old man his intention. The old man said, "No hurry. Wait a while." Zichun did not understand. The old man pointed at the Black Mountain Peak and said, "Every once in a while, the Gate of Souls will open. I hope you can go in and take a look." Then the old man told him that the reason he could speak was that he had entered the Gate of Souls and obtained a black dot of light. Since then, he had awakened his memory. But after that, many shadow destroyers went in but found nothing. So he wanted Zichun to give it a try. Zichun nodded in agreement. He really wanted to go and take a look at such a strange place. Whether it was the old man or Zichun, both of them had a kind of anticipation, or rather, anticipation in their hearts. But they did not say it out loud. Since coming here, he had spent most of his time on the Black Mountain Peak. During this time, soul power continuously entered his sea of consciousness. Although it could not help him break through, it could increase his soul power. The benefits were not small. The shadow destroyer called Xiaowei often came to Zichun. Through chatting with the old man, he learned that although Xiaowei had not awakened her memory, she had already awakened her intelligence. She sat beside Zichun for a long time. Knowing that Zichun could not understand her, she did not speak much. When Xiaowei was around, the other shadow destroyers did not come over. In fact, Zichun could not tell the other shadow destroyers apart from Xiaowei and the old man. They all seemed to look the same. "Zichun, the Gate of Souls has opened." Finally, Zichun heard the old man's long-awaited voice. He immediately stood up and looked at him. The old man was also very excited. "The Gate of Souls has opened. Come with me." Zichun followed the old man into the cave. The cave was very big. Several people could stand side by side. Soon, Zichun discovered that the other shadow destroyers had also arrived. But no one came forward. They all followed behind him. Only he and the old man walked side by side. As they went deeper, Zichun felt that the soul power around him was getting thicker. Finally, they came to the inner core of the Black Mountain Peak. He saw the Gate of Souls. It was a door suspended in the air. It kept rotating, surging with rich soul power and emitting a bright soul light. "Go." The old man's voice was clearly very excited. Zichun turned back and looked behind him. All the shadow destroyers were standing there, looking at him. Chapter 5103. All the shadow destroyers looked at Zichun. At this moment, Zichun seemed to understand their emotions. There was anticipation and hope. As the last shadow destroyer in this world, they all hoped that Zichun would gain something after entering. After all, this was the Mountain of Souls, the last treasure of the Shadow Destroyer clan. It was also because of its existence that they were protected. They hoped that Zichun could bring about a miracle. "Go." The old man's voice was also a little emotional. Zichun turned and entered the Gate of Souls. At this moment, all the shadow destroyers made a uniform movement, as if praying for Zichun. After entering the Gate of Souls, Zichun saw nothing. This place was completely empty. There was nothing here. This made him stunned, and he recalled what the old man had said. Other than himself, no one else had discovered anything after coming here. Could it be that he would also gain nothing? At this moment, Zichun saw a ray of light. A straight ray of light flashed past his eyes. Zichun wanted to reach out and grab it, but the light seemed to be in a different space and time. It passed through Zichun's palm. Zichun was unwilling to give up. His figure flashed, trying to catch up with the light. Swoosh! The light flashed and disappeared. Just as Zichun was feeling a little depressed, another light appeared in front of him. This time, 2 streaks of light streaked across Zichun's face. Zichun stared at the 2 rays of light carefully. His entire consciousness seemed to sink into them. Then he seemed to see everything in the world from the 2 rays of light. The 2 rays of light disappeared, and 3 more appeared in his vision. Then one after another, they kept stacking up. Finally, 49 rays of light appeared. After these rays of light, Zichen's eyes were bright. He saw more rays of light of the rules. At this moment, he seemed to see the essence of this world. Countless rays of light intertwined, forming an invisible net. Then the net expanded, outlining a world. These lights were all laws. Just as Zichen was in a daze and did not understand the meaning behind it, he suddenly saw the net dissipate between heaven and earth. Then, more laws appeared. These laws were very special. They intertwined and entangled with each other. From the initial incompleteness, he began to piece it together until it was finally perfect. In the end, all the rules intertwined together to form a ball of light. This ball of light represented the rules, and it was a complete set of rules. It seemed to have come from another time and space, breaking through countless spaces and crossing the barriers of time and space to arrive in front of Zichen. Before Zichen could reach out, the ball of light entered Zichen's body. In the next moment, the sphere of light spread out, forming a complete set of laws within Zichen's body. It was as if a complete small world had unfolded from Zichen's body. This made him realize something. Previously, he had seen the rules of the great world. Now, he was looking at the rules of the small world of the human body. At the moment when the rules were complete, Zichen's heart beat violently. Then, there was a surge of energy that flowed through his heart to all parts of his body. The path that had previously blocked Zichen's advancement seemed to have been patched up after the small world's rules filled in. Once again, it became unobstructed. In front of Zichen's eyes, there was a bright light. He saw countless rules flowing. At the same time, his body was also transforming towards reality. At this point, he had advanced from the 5th to the 6th. Zichen, who was at the 6th force state, truly felt the existence of his physical body. The blood in his body flowed like a river. His heart beat like a drum, thumping. All of this was real. Zichen became very excited, because the completion of the rules meant that he had the possibility of advancing again, and also the possibility of going home. Although this path might not be smooth, and he would need to cut through thorns and thorns. Moreover, looking at this space, he knew very well what he would face after accepting the complete rules. But that was not important. What was important was that he had broken through. In the future, he was destined to move forward. Countless rules flashed in front of his eyes. Among them, the destruction rule was even clearer and more obvious. This was Zichen's attack technique. After a long time, the surrounding light faded. Zichen's heart returned to its normal beating speed. Although there was still a steady flow of energy, it was no longer as surging as before. Around his body, the light of the 6th force was very obvious. In his sea of consciousness, there was a lot more soul power that could be mobilized. At this moment, he felt very good and powerful. He took a deep breath and carefully sensed his current body and strength. After a while, when Zichen came back to his senses, the front had become pitch black. Behind him, the light door had opened. Zichen looked at the void, bowed, and cupped his fists. "Thank you for your help. From now on, I will advance and retreat together with the Annihilation Shadow Clan, sharing honor and disgrace." After saying that, Zichen turned around and entered the light door. In the pitch-black space, the last bit of light disappeared. The Gate of Souls closed again. Zichen walked out of the Gate of Souls and saw that the Shadow Destroyers were still standing there. Their actions were the same. This seemed to be an ancient prayer meeting, sacred and solemn. The elder was the first to notice Zichen. He immediately asked, "How is it?" But as soon as he said that, he became extremely nervous and perturbed, because Zichen carried the hope of their clan. The other Shadow Destroyers all looked up. Although they had not gained intelligence, they understood that this concerned the fate of their clan. Light flowed around Zichen's body. A total of 6 force of light surrounded his body. This was the best response for everyone. As expected, the elder's body trembled, and then he immediately burst into tears. The other Shadow Destroyers also began to cheer. Yes, they were cheering. This time, Zichen could hear their voices and even know their intentions. Looking at these Shadow Destroyers again, he could already distinguish the differences between each person, because he had become a member of the Shadow Destroyers. The excited elder came back to his senses and immediately kowtowed to the front. The other Shadow Destroyers followed suit. Zichun had broken the rules and broken through again. This meant that he had taken a big step forward. And this big step was of great significance to the Shadow Destroyer clan. At this moment, even in this cave, they could already feel a steady flow of soul power entering their bodies. This time, it was not simply maintaining life. It seemed to have begun to stay in their bodies. When Zichun was escorted out of the cave by the crowd, he found that the original Black Mountain Peak was only half its original size. A full half of it had disappeared into thin air. Zichun knew that this was the price that the Soul Mountain had to pay for helping him fix the rules. This meant that he had received his reward. Next, it was time to complete his responsibility and mission. Chapter 5104. Zichun did not leave immediately. This was the Elder's idea. He told Zichun that he could stay here. If he could improve his realm again, it would be great. And this Soul Mountain was the most precious treasure of the Shadow Destroyer clan. It was the same for Zichun. Zichun stayed here for 3 days and decided to leave. This was because the Soul Mountain's energy was rapidly depleting. A portion of it was absorbed by him. If this went on, he might really break through. A small portion was absorbed by the other Shadow Destroyers. If he continued to stay here, the Soul Mountain would definitely be absorbed by him. Without the help of the Soul Mountain, what would happen to these Shadow Destroyers? Zichun did not dare to imagine. The Elder also sensed this situation, so he did not urge Zichun to stay. When they left, Xiaowei led the way again. She led Zichun out of here, then turned here and there and walked a long way before reaching the mountain range. After that, Zichun waved goodbye to Xiaowei. The girl, who was just a shadow, stood high up and kept waving, until Zichun's figure completely disappeared. Returning to the forest again, Zichun turned his head and glanced into the depths. His breakthrough this time was really due to luck. If he had not kept going deeper, if he had not met Xiaowei, he would have been in deep trouble. But it was also true that there was always a way out, and the world had its own destiny. A law-breaking beast was hiding in the dark, slowly approaching Zichun. Its eyes were extremely cold. It moved silently until it was behind Zichun. Zichun seemed to be a little distracted and did not notice the abnormality behind him. The next moment, the law-breaking beast pounced. As the two sides approached, its eyes were full of brutality, as if it saw its prey being devoured. At this moment, a ray of light suddenly appeared. Like lightning, it quickly cut through the sky. Poof, poof. There was only one ray of light, but two sounds came out one after the other because it was too fast. The first time, it pierced the law-breaking beast's heart. After drawing an arc in the air, the second time, it turned back and pierced its head. The huge body of the law-breaking beast crashed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. The white mark left behind by the spirit of massacre lingered in the air for a long time. Zichun turned around. This time, he didn't see the inner core, but he also put away the corpse. He was about to leave, and if there were no accidents, he probably wouldn't return. Therefore, before he left, Zichun wanted to collect more Lawbreaker Beast corpses to exchange for cultivation resources. Originally, he had wanted to leave the remaining resources on him for the Shadow Destroyers, but he realized that they could not absorb any other energy other than the energy from the Soul Mountain. Buzz! The slaughter spirit turned into a stream of light and quickly pierced through the law-breaking beast's body. By the time Zichun arrived, the law-breaking beast was already dead. He directly collected the corpses and did not need to deal with them. Then came the next one. Compared to when he had been at the 5 Force, the 6 Force Zichun had truly become a powerful Shadow Destroyer. At the same time, he had also gained the most important ability, Soul Power Perception. Just like the divine consciousness in the outside world, he could sense the movement of the grass within a radius of 300 feet. Although it couldn't be compared to when he was in the Saint Spirit realm, it was already very good for Zichun. After making some small gains, Zichun turned back and returned. No matter what, he still had to exchange for energy. This was the foundation of cultivation. Kant once said that when he reached the 6th Force, the amount of resources he needed would increase by another level. After returning, Zichun walked back to the law-breaking city. Along the way, many people saw him, but their expressions didn't change much. There were people going in and out of this place every day. However, soon, Some people realized that this person looked very familiar, but they couldn't remember where they had seen him before. It was normal for one person to have such doubts, but now, many people had the same feeling, which was not normal. Zichun was indifferent to everyone's strange looks. He's Zichun. Suddenly, someone exclaimed as he recognized Zichun. This shout was like a stone that fell into a lake, causing thousands of ripples. In an instant, there were cries of surprise everywhere. Zichun, the person who became a shadow destroyer a year ago, caused a huge commotion at that time. However, not long after, he disappeared without a trace. During this time, there were many rumors about Zichun. Some said that he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and offended a seven-force realm cultivator, which resulted in him being killed. Some said that he was summoned by a big shot, entered the depths, and didn't come out. However, the most credible one was that he died in the forest. Because he was too arrogant and had been alone, he was killed by the law-breaking beast. Because he hadn't broken through yet, his corpse was not found. Because of this rumor, many people went to the forest, wanting to find the treasures left behind by Zichun after his death. In short, there were many rumors, but there was no news about Zichun. At first, he would be a topic of conversation, but slowly, he was forgotten. Until now, when he suddenly appeared, no one remembered him. Now that they saw Zichun again, they were very shocked. At the moment, Zichun didn't have the light of power flowing around him, which made people wonder if he had advanced to the sixth-force realm. A lawbreaker at the sixth-force realm was definitely a big shot in this place. Therefore, as Zichun passed by, he attracted a lot of attention. Zichun went directly to the Hall of Spiritual Spells. After entering, everyone looked at him. Obviously, they had heard the news. Zichun didn't stay on the first floor and went directly to the second floor. Without needing to be verified, he went up directly. There was an uproar below. Some people were exclaiming the sixth-force realm. A very young woman stood at the stairs to welcome Zichun. After seeing him come up, she smiled and asked Zichun what he needed. This woman was at the four-force realm. "I want to exchange for resources," Zichun said simply. "What resources do you want to exchange? What are you going to exchange for?" The woman had a professional smile on her face. There weren't many people here. Everyone was provided one-on-one service. Zichun took out the corpse of the lawbreaker beast. The woman's smile immediately disappeared, and she retreated. Because Zichun took out too many corpses, they quickly piled up at the door. Such a scene also caused the hearts of the other people on this floor to be filled with shock. The people who didn't care at first were now looking at Zichun. To be able to take out so many corpses of lawbreaker beasts, he was definitely not an ordinary person. He's Zichun. Zichun? The shadow destroyer who disappeared. Isn't he dead? Immediately, this level began to tremble. Zichun did not care about the commotion. He walked straight ahead because time was limited. Compared to the first floor, the things here were much more comprehensive. From resources to weapons, it could be said that there was everything. There were even inner elixirs. Of course, the thing that people here exchanged the most was true spiritual power. This was the cultivation resource of the sixth-force realm. A complete corpse could be exchanged for about 100 true spiritual power. Of course, if it was dissected and then sold, it could be exchanged for more. However, this was a test of the dissection technique. A bad cut could result in a discount. The woman at the four-force realm recovered from her shock. She immediately walked up to Zichun and asked, "What do you want to exchange for?" Her attitude was even more respectful. "True spiritual power. All of it," Zichun said decisively. "How much can I get back? You have 10 corpses of law-breaker beasts here. The total is 1 in total." Chapter 5105. Zichun took out a total of 10 corpses of law-breaking beasts. Under normal circumstances, they could be exchanged for 1,000 das of power. Yet, at that moment, there was actually someone who shouted out those words. Furthermore, the reason for that was because of benevolence. After returning, Zichun didn't think that everything would go smoothly. He didn't expect trouble to come as soon as he arrived. Moreover, this place was known as the fairest place. The expression of the woman who spoke earlier changed. Then, she retreated with an apologetic look. Zichen turned around and saw a man walking towards him. He glanced at the corpses on the ground. Then, he pointed a finger at Zichen and said, 1 das. These can only be exchanged for 1 das of energy. Of course, it's because I'm kind. Otherwise, you won't even get one. The others kept quiet out of fear. They stood in the distance, including the guests in the 6 Forces state. This man had a high status. He was the manager of the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Everyone here had to listen to him. This manager might not have a high cultivation level, but his status was high. However, the crowd didn't understand why this manager was targeting Zichen. It was obvious that he was targeting him. What did you say? Zichen looked at him. I said, at most, I'll give you 1 das of energy. The man sneered. And this is because I'm kind. Is this how the Hall of Spiritual Spells does business? Zichen frowned. This was known as the fairest place. This is my place. I can do business however I want. It's none of your business. The man sneered and said, if you think it's unfair, then get lost. Zichen suppressed the anger in his heart and was about to leave with the corpses of law-breaking beasts. Leave the things and get lost. The man glanced at Zichen indifferently. Zichen's eyes were cold. Are you going to rob me? So what if we snatch it? The man said coldly, do you dare to make a move? Do you have the guts? If you break the rules, I'll let your corpse be exposed in the wilderness. In this Pofa city, rules must be obeyed. The man waved his hand at Zichen with a look of disgust. Get lost. If you dare to come here again, I'll break your legs. Zichen laughed when he heard that. If you want to die, just say it. I'm a very easygoing person. I'll definitely fulfill your wish. As Zichen spoke, he pressed down on the man's head. The other party didn't resist and said angrily, you dare to break the rules of Pofa City? The rules here don't even apply to spellbreakers, let alone a shadow destroyer. At that moment, a voice came from the staircase. Furthermore, it's the Hall of Spiritual Spells. You're trying to do evil to a shadow destroyer. You're simply courting death. Kant came up from downstairs. After hearing the news of Zichen's appearance, he immediately came over. Back then, the 2 martial crystal sources that Zichen had given him, in addition to some other resources, had allowed Kant to successfully break through and advance to the 6 Forces stage. Although Zichen had been forgotten by this world, he had never forgotten. He also firmly believed that Zichen was still alive. This was because he had seen Zichen fight with his own eyes. If the strong cultivators in the depths didn't come out, it was almost impossible for the spell-breaker beasts in the forest to kill him. As expected, Zichen had returned. Since he could come here, it was obvious that he had broken through. Zichen glanced at Kant. Is it okay to kill people here? Kant said, they were in the wrong first. Zichen nodded. He understood what Kant meant. What? You still want to fight? Unexpectedly, the manager wasn't afraid at all, even if a spellbreaker came. After breaking free from Zichen's grasp, he waved his hand and a few strangers appeared on the 2nd floor. Their gazes were cold. They stood in different places and vaguely surrounded Zichen. Seeing this, the others dispersed again. It was obvious that a battle was about to happen. Among these people, there were 5 Forces Realm and 6 Forces Realm. One of them was a man with a sword in his hands. He leaned against a pillar and looked a little lazy. In another direction, a half-naked man with a heavy hammer on his shoulder was looking at Zichen from the corner of his eyes. These 2 were not only 6 Forces Realm, but also the best of the best. In addition, there was a 6 Forces Realm cultivator in each of the other 4 directions. Seeing this, Kant's face turned cold. The Hall of Spiritual Spells has guts. How dare you break the rules? The middle-aged man waved his hand and said, this has nothing to do with you. If you don't want to die, hurry up and get down. Don't die here unjustly. Although he was very arrogant in front of Zichen, he still didn't dare to mess around with Kant, a spellbreaker. Are you stupid? He's a shadow destroyer. How dare you attack a shadow destroyer? Kant said angrily. He couldn't understand what these people were thinking. The steward smiled coldly. Shadow destroyer. How impressive. I just don't know if his head will be separated from his body by my sword. The man with the sword smiled faintly. He looked at Zichen and clenched the sword in his hand. My heavy hammer is also thirsty. I wonder if the blood of a shadow destroyer tastes good. The brawny man waved his heavy hammer and smiled evilly. Zichen smiled. You can still smile like this. Looks like you. As soon as the man with the sword finished speaking, a ray of light flew towards him. Poof! His body leaning against the pillar involuntarily left the pillar and fell to the side. The long sword in his hand directly hit the ground. Then his body fell heavily, making a thud. No one had thought that Zichen would make a move, and it was so swift. The brawny man had just raised his heavy hammer when the ray of light pierced his forehead. His body fell forward due to inertia. The heavy hammer in his hand swung forward, making a huge noise. Two of the steward's strongest subordinates had died in a single exchange. Buzz! The ray of light was trembling, and the massacre spirit flew away quickly. Poof! 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 Following that, the hostile existences fell one after another. Those in the 6-force realm still had intact corpses. As for those in the 5-force realm, they directly dissipated. At this level, the power of the massacre spirit had become stronger. Kant stood there. He was originally full of anger, but now there was only shock in his eyes. Not far away, the steward's eyes were wide open. Such killing power was simply too terrifying. However, he was clearly not afraid. He pointed at Zichen and reprimanded, "How dare you? How dare you?" Buzz! The slaughter spirit arrived and pierced through the enemy's head. It then drew an arc in the air and returned to Zichen's side before disappearing. There was no more hostility around. That was because those who were hostile were all dead. The people in the distance all stood there, not even daring to breathe. In an instant, many people in the 6-force realm were killed. That was too terrifying. Zichen glanced around, then walked straight to the counter. In front of everyone, he directly took away the 1,000 daos of true magic. That was what he had originally exchanged. Then, Zichen took away 9 more corpses of the law-breaking beasts, leaving one behind. He looked at the woman in the 4-force realm who was trembling in fear and said, "This is your reward for leading the way." After that, he went straight downstairs. Chapter 5106. If I can't write it, tomorrow will be even worse. Thunder Marshal has not been updated today. It is currently in your hands. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 5107. The reason why Zichen took away the corpse of the lawbreaker beast was because the Hall of Spiritual Spells had broken the rules. He deserved to have the loot. When he went downstairs, the others backed away. Although they did not see it with their own eyes, they knew what had happened. Zichen left the Hall of Spiritual Spells directly. Kant followed him out. As a lawbreaker in the 6-forces state, no one dared to stop him. He was also the only one who had broken through. "Where are you going?" Kant asked after he followed him out. Outside the city, Zichen turned around and threw out an item. It was a ring containing all his loot. "Help me exchange it." Kant caught the ring and asked, "Where can I find you?" "Where there is a battle." Zichen left with large strides, heading straight out of the city. There would definitely be a battle, or more battles. The news of Zichen appearing in the city and killing someone in the Hall of Spiritual Spells spread quickly. Zichen, who had disappeared for a long time, appeared in front of everyone again. And this time, he had broken through. This made many people who knew the inside story feel that it was unbelievable. The Shadow Destroyer was already a dead end. How could Zichen break through? Zichen walked out of the city and jumped onto a big rock. He lay there and waited quietly for new trouble to come. He did not expect to run into trouble in the Hall of Spiritual Spells, so he killed the person directly. As for what would happen next, he wanted to see. When Spicer and the others heard the news, they immediately walked out of the city together. When they arrived, many people had already gathered. Zichen was lying on a big rock leisurely. The others stood far away, not daring to get close. "It's really him." When Phoebe saw Zichen, he was shocked. It's been so long. How could he still be alive? Not only is he alive, but he also broke through. Spicer frowned. He had seen Zichen escape into the forest with his own eyes, and Andrew had been suppressed in the battle with Zichen. On the way back, Andrew clearly told him that it was impossible for Zichen to break through because it involved the rules. But now, Zichen had actually broken through. A group of 6 people walked out of the city and soared into the sky, heading straight in this direction. They were from the Hall of Spiritual Spells. As a force, the Hall of Spiritual Spells was rich and had recruited many experts. Zichen had killed their people, which was a violation of the rules. They had come to collect their debts. A total of 6 people landed on the ground and surrounded Zichen. Zichen sat up, glanced at the 6 of them and said, "You don't even have a 7th strength state cultivator. Are you looking down on me?" He yawned. Then, his figure disappeared. Like a ghost, he appeared in front of a 6 realms cultivator. The 6 realms cultivator who came here knew how powerful Zichen was, so he had been on guard. Just as Zichen appeared in front of him, the cultivator shouted, and a dazzling light bloomed in front of him. The 6 realms cultivator's power contained the rules of attack. This was his rule, which was attached to the blade, and he slashed at Zichen's head. This slash was full of power and momentum. Zichen stretched out his hand and easily blocked the blade. He allowed the energy to wreak havoc, but it was unable to move forward. In the next moment, light flowed in Zichen's palm. This was a crisscrossing attack, which directly swept past the 6 realms cultivator's body. The light of energy on the cultivator's body immediately dimmed and extinguished, and then his body scattered. When the people in the distance saw this, their faces changed drastically. This was too terrifying, wasn't it? Without looking at the broken body on the ground, Zichen's figure flashed again, and he appeared in front of the second 6 realms cultivator. One punch, he was sent flying. Puff! While the cultivator's body was still in midair, the slaughter spirit pierced through his head. He fell to the ground and died. In the blink of an eye, 2 of the 6 had died. Go to hell. A cultivator rushed forward quickly, the sword in his hand flowing with a fierce aura. He came from behind and stabbed at Zichen's back. A ray of light flashed, and the bone stick blocked the attack behind him. When it came into contact with the sword, it shook off the weapon. The 6 realms cultivator who was holding the weapon changed his expression. The light of energy around him surged wildly, and he rushed forward again. He wanted to get close to Zichen in one go. At this moment, a punch landed on his chest. Buzz! The rule appeared again, and like the sharpest weapon in the world, it swept past his body. This was a scene that no one could look at directly. Run! In the blink of an eye, 3 of them were dead. When the other 3 saw this, they all wanted to retreat, and they turned around and ran. Sure enough, it was too difficult to kill Zichen without being in the 7 realms. You want to run? Zichen glanced at the 3 of them. They were very smart, and they all ran in different directions. It was obvious that they wanted to pray for their own good. Zichen chased after them. When he used all his energy, he was much faster than them. A scream came from afar. Everyone knew that this was the 4th person to die. Then, 2 more screams came one after another. None of the 6 cultivators managed to escape alive. Zichen collected their belongings and casually threw their corpses to the side. Compared to the lawbreakers, it seemed that the lawbreakers were more willing to die. For example, they were afraid of the lawbreakers, but they were not afraid of him. Was it because there were more lawbreakers? He walked back, took the weapons and rings of the dead 6 realms cultivators, and waved his hand. In the next moment, a ray of light swept across, and the mutilated corpses flew into the distance. He wanted to continue staying here, and those corpses were no doubt an eyesore. When Kant finished exchanging his items and came back, the battle had already ended. He looked at Zichen, who was lying there. After hesitating, he still walked forward, ignoring the warnings of his companions. If he approached Zichen in this situation, it would be obvious that he was related to him. When trouble came, he might be implicated. Kant returned the ring to Zichen and exchanged all the items inside for resources. Zichen took it and thanked him profusely. What are you going to do next? Kant asked. I'll kill that guy last time, and then we'll see. This was what Zichen thought of when he was in trouble with the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Kant's expression changed, and he said, Are you sure? Last time, Andrew suppressed Zichen completely. All of Zichen's attacks were ineffective against him. Although he had broken through this time, and his combat power had increased, Kant knew that the difference between them was not just a simple realm. It shouldn't be a big problem. In Zichen's body, the rules had been completely replenished. It should be impossible for the other party to suppress him. However, Zichen still wanted to try what would happen if they fought. He glanced in Spicer's direction, believing that they should have already sent the news. Next, he just had to wait. In the process of waiting, no one from the Hall of Spiritual Spells came to cause trouble. The crowd did not disperse. Everyone stayed in the distance, waiting to watch a good show. Chapter 5108. Andrew was led by a few spellbreakers to the outskirts of the city. As he descended, he saw Zichen standing up from the boulder. At this moment, Zichen was looking at him indifferently. A strange look appeared on Andrew's face. "You're still alive. That's not all," Zichen said coldly. The energy around him began to surge. There was a total of 6 forces. 6 forces state. Not only are you alive, but you've also broken through. When Andrew saw this, he clicked his tongue in wonder and said, "Saying that you stepped on dog shit and walked into dog shit luck is an insult to you. You're a miracle. How did you break through?" "Why don't you guess?" Zichen jumped down from the boulder and approached Andrew. "Why? Do you think you can beat me now that you've broken through? Have you forgotten how you ran away with your tail between your legs last time?" Andrew smiled disdainfully at the provocation in Zichen's eyes. Not many people knew about this. Many people asked curiously after hearing Andrew's words. Unfortunately, no one knew the answer. "Let's try again today." Zichen took the initiative to charge forward. The moment he got close to Andrew, he threw out a punch. It went straight for Andrew's face. Andrew stood there with a disdainful look on his face. Faced with this punch, he did not dodge. The punch hit his forehead, but the energy on it disappeared quickly. It did not hurt or itch. Kant's expression changed when he saw this. The scene from last time was happening again. Zichen's next punch came and went straight for Andrew's temple. The punch landed squarely on Andrew, but it did not cause any substantial damage. There was an uproar in the distance. Everyone did not understand why. Andrew's foot landed. Zichen blocked it with his hand and slid back. Andrew looked at Zichen. "Come back with me now. I won't kill you." Zichen smiled faintly and said, "You?" Next, he attacked again and again. He used all kinds of powerful attacks, but he could not hurt Andrew at all. Just as his attacks were about to hit Andrew, they were dissolved by an invisible force. No one knew why this happened. However, everyone's eyes were burning with passion. If they could master such a move, wouldn't they be invincible? Kant wouldn't forget what happened last time, so he was filled with worry. Last time, Zichen had escaped. Would he be able to escape this time? He had already noticed that the people who had followed Andrew had quietly scattered in all directions. What's going on? Phoebe and the others were also shocked as they looked at Spicer, who was at the 6 forces state. Spicer shook his head and said, "It could be a deep secret. This is too amazing. If everyone had this kind of skill, then everyone would be able to crush Zichen and grind him to the ground." Phoebe's eyes were filled with envy. They had suffered a great loss in front of Zichen. Every time, they were crushed and humiliated. Seeing Zichen retreat again, Andrew said, "My patience is limited. I'll give you one last chance. Come back with me, or you'll die. This time, I won't give you a chance to escape." Zichen stretched his muscles and said indifferently, "I can't deny that you guys do have some ability. You can almost completely restrain my energy, regardless of your cultivation level." It was the same for the 5 forces state and the 6 forces state. Andrew laughed mockingly. Not only did he restrain Zichen, but he also restrained all the shadow destroyers. The powerful shadow destroyers were just a joke in front of him. Then, Zichen changed the topic. "But that's the end of it." Andrew seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world and couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Zichen and said disdainfully, You want to change this situation? It's not that I'm looking down on you, but I'll just stand here and not move. You can't do anything to me even if you tire yourself to death." Zichen also laughed and didn't argue. He released his aura, fully at the 6 forces state. The energy in his body vibrated, and so did the soul power in his sea of consciousness. At this moment, Zichun gave off an inexplicable feeling. It was as if he was a different person from before. Zichun's eyes sharpened. At this moment, the complete rules in his body were displayed. He approached Andrew again, this time even faster. The moment he got close, he punched out horizontally and smashed into Andrew's temple. Bam! Andrew's disdainful smile froze, and his body flew backward. In the distance, there was an uproar again. How could this be? Andrew landed on the ground. Zichun's figure flashed again, and he appeared in front of the other party, kicking out. Bam! Andrew was sent flying. When he landed, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. How could this be? Weren't you unable to defeat him earlier? Phoebe exclaimed again. Spicer shook his head, clearly unsure of what was going on. You. Even Andrew himself didn't know why this happened, let alone Spicer. He stood up and pointed at Zichun, his eyes full of disbelief. Let's go again. Zichun rushed forward and attacked. His huge fist smashed down, smashing into Andrew's face and sending him flying again. Without the suppression of the special rules, Andrew was just a 6 forces realm cultivator. When Zichun was in the 5 forces realm, he could already kill such an existence. Right now, it was not difficult to beat the other party with his fists. You're courting death. Andrew flipped over and got up. He was furious, and a brilliance appeared in front of him. This brilliance was dazzling and powerful, causing many people to palpitate. However, Zichun did not care. He still punched forward. In an instant, the brilliance shattered, and he punched his opponent's chest. He coughed out blood again and flew backward. Andrew's aura also weakened. I don't believe it. Andrew was shocked and angry. He once again mobilized the rules that could suppress the Shadow Destroyers and attacked Zichun. This time, Zichun looked at him and said, I'll start with you. He stretched out his palm, and there was a light in it. He slapped out. Wong. Countless vertical and horizontal rays of light formed what seemed to be the sharpest net in the world and swept past Andrew's attack. His attack was directly disintegrated. The light continued forward and swept past Andrew's body. First, a strange light appeared in his body, trying to block the attack of the net. But in the next moment, the light was crushed, and the light net swept past his body. Many silk threads appeared on Andrew's body. He stood there, looking at Zichun in a daze, unable to say a word. Are you confused? Zichun smiled faintly, walked to his side, and whispered in his ear, Repair the small world, then repair the great world. There was a look of horror in Andrew's eyes. Unfortunately, he could not transmit such an important message. His body was disintegrated just like that. After landing, it was torn to pieces. Zichun looked up at the sky. His body was a small world, and now it had been completely repaired by the Soul Mountain. Next, he, the only Shadow Destroyer, would repair the great world's rules. Chapter 5109. Andrew was dead, and Zichun had taken his ring. However, he did not find any valuable clues inside. In terms of resources, he could not even match up to Zichun's. The sky darkened, and everyone returned one after another. It was not safe to be outside the city at night. They would never forget what had happened today. Zichun also returned to the city. At the very least, he would not be in danger tonight. He returned to his previous residence. He had originally planned to visit Marcus, but he did not expect that Marcus had already moved away. When he returned to his residence, it was already covered in dust. Zichun waved his hand, and a stream of air swept past. The room instantly became spotless. Zichun sat there and began to think about his future. Actually, returning this time was risky. However, if he wanted to continue growing, he could not leave the resources here. This was a risk that he had to take. It was not just a risk. Zichun had taken the resources but did not return to the forest. This was a huge gamble. He wanted to gamble. He was also gambling. He even had to gamble. Everything would depend on tomorrow. The news of Andrew's death quickly spread to the ears of some observant people. Eden, who was at the 7th strength state, was actually Zichun's immediate superior. After hearing the news of Andrew's death in battle, he was very surprised. At his level, He already knew some secrets. This was also the reason why he was so calm when he went to recruit Zichun last time. He did not feel sorry for Zichun's rejection. Spellbreaker Bosch had also tried to recruit Zichun. When he heard that Andrew had been killed, his expression changed. Even if Eden knew some secrets, it was limited. He did not know as much as Bosch. If it was said that Zichun's ability to break through to the 6th force grade was a miracle, then killing Andrew was another miracle. On a larger scale, this was turning the sky upside down. However, the matter concerned the Shadow Destroyer. The two of them did not dare to casually deal with it. They could only wait for orders from above. Therefore, the two of them tacitly sent people to keep an eye on Zichun and did not do anything else. That night, the news spread to the depths of the city, causing quite a commotion. Immediately, some bad-tempered spellbreakers said that they wanted to kill Zichun. What kind of joke was this? The spellbreakers had suppressed the Shadow Destroyers for countless years. How could they let them overturn the situation? Clearly, there were still some people who remained rational among the furious crowd, and there were some disputes. This argument lasted for the entire night. The next day, Zichun walked out of his room at daybreak. Then, he realized that many people had woken up earlier than him. Perhaps they hadn't slept at all. Gradually, more and more people gathered at the periphery. Of course, a large portion of them were there purely to watch the show. Zichun, on the other hand, was waiting for trouble to come again. The waiting time was not long, only about 2 hours. 3 6 Powers Realm Cultivators appeared. They were all spellbreakers. One of them held a saber while the other two held swords. The one with the saber looked at Zichun and coldly asked, "Are you Zichun?" "It's me." Zichun nodded. "Die." The man shouted and slashed down with the saber in his hand. A real saber light flew toward Zichun with him as the starting point. A gully appeared on the ground. All rules and restrictions were useless in front of a lawbreaker. Zichun dodged. At the same time, a stream of light flew out. It was the massacre spirit. Puff. Just as Zichun dodged the blade, the ray of light pierced through the man's temple, completely penetrating his body. The man's body swayed. The power flowing around him showed signs of exhaustion. The other two with swords saw this, and their expressions changed drastically. They were about to go forward and help. Puff! The next moment, the massacre spirit pierced through the man's heart from the back. Zichun did not test the waters like yesterday. He directly used his full strength. After the rules of the small world in his body were displayed, his combat strength greatly increased. At this moment, Zichun was the Shadow Destroyer. The nearby existences who had come to join in on the fun all felt a strong pressure that made them feel extremely uncomfortable. It was similar to the suppression of bloodline. Like the king of exotic beasts, it had a natural suppression effect. And this world originally belonged to the Shadow Destroyer. Now that Zichun, the only Shadow Destroyer, had appeared, everyone felt the pressure. The man with the saber widened his eyes as if he could not believe all this. Then, his body swayed and he fell to the ground, dead. Swoosh! Zichun's body flashed and rushed toward the two swords. Seeing this, the two of them immediately charged forward. They began to work together. Sharp sword chi tore through the air, carrying the attack of the rules as they attacked Zichun. In Zichun's hand, the bone staff smashed down and blocked the two swords. Hum! The massacre spirit flew forward like a stream of light and attacked one of them. Seeing this, the other party screamed and retreated, avoiding the attack of the massacre spirit. Bang! However, at this moment, Zichun smashed down again and directly pushed the 6 forces realm next to him back. Then, his body slowed down and he approached the other party. His palm moved forward. Light intertwined between his palms, and this rule breaker was completed. The 6 forces realm retreated in fear. After taking a few steps back, his body scattered with a crash. Seeing this, the last person immediately retreated. Previously, they could not win even when working together. Now that he was alone, he would definitely die. You want to leave? A cold light flashed in Zichun's eyes as he rushed forward quickly. During this time, the massacre spirit was the first to attack, turning into a stream of light. At this moment, a person suddenly appeared and blocked in front of the 6 forces realm. He grabbed the massacre spirit in his hand. Zichun followed and slapped down with his palm. Light intertwined between his palms. The person also slapped down with his palm. Light flickered. Chi. Chi. The two attacks met and kept canceling each other out. Zichen immediately retreated and looked forward warily. A person stood in front of him, surrounded by the light of 7 powers. The 7 forces realm. The other party looked at Zichen and said, "That's enough." The next moment, he let go of his hand and the massacre spirit flew back. The 6 forces realm was terrified. When he turned around and saw the 7 forces realm, he said in surprise, "Sir." The 7 forces realm waved his hand, indicating that he should not speak. After blocking Zichen's palm, the 7 forces realm's robe had become extremely tattered. Although he was not injured, he looked very embarrassed. He looked at Zichen, and Zichen looked back at him. The others around them did not even dare to breathe loudly. A 7 forces realm was enough to make people respect him. Moreover, based on Zichen's terrifying combat strength, only a 7 forces realm could suppress him. The 7 forces realm looked at Zichen, but did not say anything. He turned around and left. Zichen noticed that there was blood dripping from the fingertip of the 7 forces realm that had just caught the massacre spirit. Obviously, even a 7 forces realm could not ignore the attack of a real shadow destroyer. Zichen let out a long sigh of relief. It seemed that he had made the right bet. After collecting the spoils, he returned to his room. After today's battle, he believed that there would be fewer troubles in the future. "Boy, you're very confident." As soon as he returned to his room, an indifferent voice sounded from Zichen's room.